Zoning Board of Appeals. The board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant requested variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. If you would like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, and it looks like this evening we're only going to have 7 out of 9 members, you must inform the chairperson immediately following the public hearing. Petitioners shall do their best to limit their presentations to 10 minutes. Each participant in public hearing shall do their best to limit their comments to 3 minutes. And before I move to approval of the minutes for March 9th and April 13th, I'd like to introduce Mr. Paul Curtis to the board. Welcome to the board, sir. If you want to give us a quick rundown of what brought you here.
Well,
name, rank, serial number, whatever.
Right. Long-time resident. I moved to Royal Oak in 2004. I'm a local real estate broker. Very interested in our community and how our homes and commercial buildings measure up. So thankful to have a chance to be involved.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. Welcome aboard. With that being said, I'm looking for approval. Do you need separate motions on the minutes or is one? No. Looking for approval of the minutes for the March 9th and April 13th meetings.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Kroll.
I'll support.
Supported by Ms. Zukin. Is there any additions, deletions, corrections? Not seeing any, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Abstain. Wasn't here for those meetings.
I don't think as long as you've read them, you have to abstain.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Oh,
You can certainly vote if you've read them and they sing, you know.
Well, then support.
Okay. All right. That moves us on to old business. We don't have any old business that I'm aware of, so I will move right along to item number D1 of new business, which is case number F-17-06-02, a public hearing on the appeal of Justin Critchfield, petitioner and owner for the following variance to the city's fence ordinance. Waive 2 feet from the maximum permitted 4-foot fence height within a front yard setback along 9th Street to install a 6-foot tall site obscuring wood fence within a front yard setback as defined in the zoning ordinance located at 902 South Lafayette. Mr. Murphy.
This property is located on the corner of Lafayette and 9th. Due to the orientation of the lots on Lafayette as well as the lots on 9th, this property requires a front yard setback along 9th Street. So the fence ordinance only allows a maximum fence height of 4 feet in that front yard setback or that setback along 9th Street. And the petitioner is proposing to install a 6-foot tall site obscuring wood fence along that north property line, as you can see from the sketch that they have in the packet. So the petitioner is seeking a waiver of 2 feet from that 4-foot fence height of along the front yard setback along 9th Street. You'll find in the packet aerial photograph for reference, as well as some helpful photographs that illustrate the current condition and the materials that were submitted for a building permit and rejected by the building office due to non-compliance.
Are there any questions for staff at this point?
We're only seeking a variance then for 9th Street, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
All of 9th Street or just that covers the backyard by the driveway there?
No, it would be the entire portion. I'll bring up the sketch that they provided.
I see, thank you.
Due to the orientation of the apartment dwelling along 9th Street, the fence ordinance only allows a 4-foot fence in this entire location along 9th Street, along that north property line. And that fence that they have shown, the entire thing is proposed to be 6 feet. So anything within That front yard setback needs to be for anything to the south of it not within that front yard setback, could be 6, so they could have a stagger in the height. They're proposing to have it uniform all the way across in their backyard at 6 feet.
Any other questions? Yes,
Is
sir.
this replacing the fence in the exact same location, with the exception of the clear vision triangle, it looks like?
It appears so based on the sketch. The petitioner probably, that'd be a good
All right,
question for the
okay,
petitioner to confirm that, but it appears so, yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Is the petitioner present? Yeah, please come to the microphone, introduce yourself, and tell us what you'd like to do, sir.
Hi, I'm Justin Critchfield. We just have 3 kids and a dog that we're trying to control, and we'll probably end up with yard junk that we would like to not have everybody have to look at, like a trampoline or something like that, we think. And it's probably been there 100-year-old chain link fence, close to 100 years old, I'm guessing. And yeah, we just want a privacy fence along that street. It's kind of busy and there's a lot of foot traffic there, including people from it's just a block off Woodward, so there's a lot of bus stop traffic going through our neighborhood too that isn't just local. And I don't know if it matters. We went around, or I just asked my neighbors if they were good with it and had them all sign this, everybody pretty much on the street.
Yeah, hand that to Ms. Sukin if you would, and she'll pass it around. Thank you.
So every house surrounding us for sure signed it, but I think most of the street did. We're all pretty close on that street. So yeah, we would just like to keep things out of eye shot and a little privacy, and also the tenants do rotate pretty quick inside of the apartment next door. So even would just be nice to have privacy. That's all.
Chris, did you have a question in terms of?
Well, yes, thank you. Is it replacing the chain link fence in the exact same spot? No more, no less?
Yeah.
Okay, it looked like it was kind of being angled in at a 45-degree angle, sort of at the
Yeah,
the
at
driveway.
that one corner, we actually have a temporary chicken wire fence or something, what it is. But when I bought the house years ago, it looks like a car might have slid into the corner pole and broke some of the fence. And so we just cut that piece out to replace it with something to control our kids. But yeah, that's the only variation it would really be. But the outside perimeter would all be the same.
And that's for vision backing in and out, kind of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah. Oh, the 10-foot setback on the angle?
Right.
Yeah, from the driveway. Yeah, that's noted in there.
Okay, yep, thank you.
I have another question. You said there was bus traffic from Woodward?
Oh, no, I mean,
The
just...
pedestrians getting off, is there a bus stop at 9th?
Yeah, along Woodward, there's just bus stops. And we're kind of in between a lot of the churches that might feed homeless and things like that, which is fine, but it just increases foot traffic. I mean, anybody going from taking the bus, using the bus system in, but I don't know who all that is, but it's just a little heavier than normal traffic. And people turn there to try and miss the light at Lincoln off Woodward, so stuff like that. Pretty high traffic.
Any other questions for the petitioner at this point? Yes, sir.
You raised your hand for me. Oh, I noticed a few arborvitae in the northwest corner, I believe, which are great for privacy. Have you considered maybe extending those in the areas in lieu of the 6-foot-high fence?
I did. I spent like $1,000 and managed to kill all but 2 of them. And so my wife said, go see if you can get a fence. You're an idiot. And so here I am.
She didn't really say that, did she?
Something like that. I'm pretty bad at growing things, so something to that. Oh.
The question I have, you said you're trying to do privacy with the apartment, but the apartment's like 4 stories, so even a 6-foot-high fence, you're not really getting any privacy except at the ground floor.
Yeah, there's just a lot of traffic in and out of people. It's just higher traffic than a normal house because there's many units at ground level, and people park. There's no parking other than that. There's 2 spots there. So they usually park all along the side of our house and walk in.
So have you had a problem with privacy so far in the current fence you have that's only 4 feet high?
No, it just looks like crap, but it's not a real issue. It's just a preference, I
So
guess.
would you have a problem if we allowed you to have the 6-foot-high from the garage south, but the front half be 4 feet because of trying to keep it a little bit more open for all the pedestrian traffic to have a little bit more eyesight towards cars backing up in your driveway? Because part of that vision triangle there is, of course, for safety. And as you said, there's a lot of pedestrian walking. And
Well, it would have the 10-foot
Right.
setback, 45 on that corner. But I'm not that, it just ruins the point. We probably would just do something else. I mean, it's at eye level. I mean, you're looking down into our yard or you're not. And so that 2 feet just makes all that difference for us. And I think it aesthetically is better for the neighborhood. I don't know.
well, it comes up right up to the sidewalk, so you're all of a sudden crunching the feel of the person walking by versus if it was set back a little bit farther, like even if it was set back to your house limit, there would be a little bit more relief instead of someone just walking up and having a fence right there.
Yeah, it just diminishes our property values by shrinking the yard, I would say, the usable piece of the yard. And that's something we would like to avoid. And I mean, even the house in the same position, 1 block south of us has it looks good. I mean, has their fence, I think it's been like that forever, but it looks really good. I'm driving around before coming here, or while we were trying to plan our fence, we noticed there's lots of them. I know some of them are grandfathered in just from, but I haven't noticed anywhere where it's been a problem or aesthetically not pleasing, from my experience, but.
Any other questions for the petitioner at this point? If not, I will ask you to take a seat, sir, so I can go ahead and open up the public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to address the zoning board on this matter, please wait to be recognized by the chair. Limit your comments to 3 minutes and introduce yourself, name and address for the record, if you would, please. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to do so? Not seeing any, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table for further discussion or a motion.
Do you need to check with him, see if he wants to go on?
Oh, that's right. Sir? I completely forgot to ask you. Thank you, Mr. Kroll. We are short of, 2 members short tonight, so you would need 5.
Since it's a waiver from the fence ordinance requirements, it just requires a majority of those.
Members present? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
Except for
Zoning
those.
ordinance is different due to state standards.
Okay, so just 4 affirmative votes then. Okay. All right, very good. Never mind. That took care of itself. All right, so back to this side of the board for any additional discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I see this as being, it's a corner property. It's sort of a, I don't want to say a major road being Lafayette, but it's, it's a higher used road. I'm inclined to be for granting the variance. I appreciate that there's the clear vision triangle for pedestrians and bicyclists. Yeah, for those 2 reasons. Thank you.
Ms. Zukin?
The ordinance requires that there's a showing of practical difficulty, and I think every corner has the same difficulty, and the ordinance specifically says that the front and the other corner are both front yards. And there was an intent, I think, to keep it at 4 feet, maybe just for aesthetics, but whatever it is, I think that's the intent of the ordinance, and we've required people to do 4 feet before, and it's come out really nicely, and I think 4 feet would work. I have 6, of course, on the 2 sides that it's permitted, but along 9th, I think it would be better if it's 4.
Anybody else?
Well, I have a question, because the variance stays with the property, right? So here we happen to have a current homeowner who's interested in a triangle, a vision triangle there, setback of 10 feet so that the pedestrian has more safety. But that doesn't necessarily hold true 20 years from now, correct?
It's part of the ordinance.
It is. So this variance means it must remain with that clear vision triangle. Is that true?
Mr. Murphy, I mean, as far as I know, there was actually some cases around Royal Oak where homeowners who had had existing fences for quite some time were approached because they were built in a non-conforming way, and they were being asked if they could reconfigure the fences to include that visibility triangle. So wouldn't it be the case that that would have to stay as part of the approval if indeed it is improved?
Yes, that's a current ordinance requirement now. So they would be issued a permit whether the variance was granted or not, if the variance is denied, they could still seek a permit to build a 4-foot fence, and within that 10-foot triangle, they would still have to maintain it.
Thank you.
Within
I
that 10-foot
misunderstood.
Yeah, within that 10-foot triangle, it actually is lower, it's 3 feet. So it's a lower requirement.
Thank you.
And then that would have to, once they were issued a permit and it was reviewed and finalized in the field, couldn't be modified without meeting any modification to the ordinance requirements, which would like eliminate the vision triangle, which I don't see that happening in the future.
Right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, maybe just throwing out there for the board, if 6 feet is too much, maybe to split the difference and go 5 feet. I don't know. So I'm not looking for an answer, just simply stating it.
Well, if you want to offer it in the form of a motion, we can certainly, Mr. Olfak, yes, sir?
I'd prefer not to split the difference. We'll just create it nice and simple. I right now propose to deny the motion as it's proposed, the variance, sorry, not the motion, but deny the variance as requested. Basically, I agree with Deborah or Ms. Hukin that we've seen a lot of...
Actually, before you elaborate on your motion,
yes,
let me
sorry.
get support.
Yep.
Is anybody who's willing to
support.
support that motion? That's supported by Ms. Zukin. Yes, sir, please continue.
As we've seen before, many corner lots have pulled off the 4-foot very nicely. And although Lafayette is more of a bigger road, this is along 9th Street, which is not as highly traveled compared to Lafayette. Pedestrian-wise, yes. In which case that worries me when it comes to safety, and therefore I really prefer in those cases to be keeping with the ordinance, especially with the triangle and, like Joseph said, the 3-foot there, versus having it 6 foot high. I just am not comfortable with that for pedestrian safety. And because of that, I'm proposing no.
Mr. Kroll? Did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Did I see your hand, Mr. Kroll?
Yes. I think we've had some really nice compromises on fencing over the last year. Doesn't appear to me that you wanted to compromise very much. I'll be supporting the motion to deny because I can't really deal with the whole thing as a 6-foot. I was kind of in a deal-making mode before you said you wouldn't consider that. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Any other comments? I won't be supporting this motion. As a matter of fact, I spent a few minutes parked down the corner of your street, and the reality is that 9th Street does get more cut-through traffic than I had ever realized as a result of people trying to skirt the light at Lincoln, particularly because you can't make a right on red at Lincoln, so people realize if the light's about to change, why don't I just turn on 9th Street and avoid having to wait. And the way that the fence is being configured, it's far enough away from the corner of Lafayette where I don't see how it is going to create any safety issues. He's putting the 10-foot triangle in there for visibility. I think the hardship that this petitioner has is the fact that his street is traveled much more heavily than many other streets in the city as a result of its location, both in vehicular and foot traffic. So I think it would do reasonable justice to allow the 6-foot fence. If there's no other comments, then I will call for the vote, and the motion at this point is to deny the requested variance. All those in favor of the motion to deny signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
No.
Nay.
Okay, I got the noes to raise hands.
No.
That's what
Motion is 5-0. No, 4-3.
The motion
It
fails.
Motion fails.
I thought you had got half. Oh, there's 7. I thought you had 4 no, or 4.
Who are the noes?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And you need a
I was
majority.
a yes.
Yeah, you were, yes.
I supported the motion.
Yes.
Motion to deny fails.
All right, is anybody willing to offer an alternative motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support.
Can Mr. Kroll make that motion after having voted to deny it initially? Okay.
Peculiar, but yes.
Okay. So now we have a motion to approve by Mr. Kroll and supported by Mr. Curtis. Is there any additional discussion? I think we've hashed it out pretty good.
Supported, I'm sorry, as proposed.
As proposed.
Okay.
All right. Not seeing anything else, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
2 noes. Right.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so motion is adopted. The variance is granted.
Very good. You're all set.
I hope your wife is happy with you.
That moves us along to our next item of new business, which is item D2. Do you want me to read these all to the record, or you want to sort of address them one by one as we're going through them?
It's not necessary. It's not necessary. You can simply mention the case address and the, we'll say, to permit.
Okay, so we have case number 170614, requesting 6 different variances located at 2209 Vincetta Boulevard. Mr. Murphy, I'll let you sort of go through them one by one. There we go.
This is a 3-sided property which has frontage on Vincetta, Murdoch, and Lloyd. It's essentially an island piece of property, and it's a little over 1/2 acre in size. Petitioner is proposing to construct it's vacant, and the petitioner is proposing to construct a single-family home with a detached garage. According to the petitioner's calculations, the dwelling would contain a total usable floor area of 4,382 square feet. There is definition in the zoning ordinance which clearly defines usable floor area, and that's included in the report for your reference if needed. The ordinance does allow for a maximum of 3,500 square feet of usable floor area. So they're seeking a difference of that 882 square feet from the maximum permitted, again, 3,500 square feet of the lot usable floor area for the house. That's the first variance. Due to the orientation of the surrounding properties, the site has a front yard setback along Vincetta, side yard setback along Lloyd, and a front yard setback along Murdoch. The dwelling would be oriented toward Vincetta, and if you'll reference the drawings in the packet and on the screen, you'll see that the dwelling is not that the dwelling is sited on not perpendicular to the front lot line, and you'll also see that there is a jog in the front lot line. At its closest point, the house sits 2 feet from the east setback along Vincetta. The zoning ordinance requires a minimum front yard setback of 25 feet. Again, at that closest point, according to the petitioner's drawings, it's 2 feet. So they're seeking a waiver of 23 feet from that minimum 25-foot setback. If the board does grant the variance to allow for the house to be sited in its location that it's shown, there's a zoning ordinance provision which allows a porch and steps to project into that required minimum. Again, the required minimum is 25. A porch and steps can project into that required minimum no more than 7 feet. So under that scenario, a porch and steps would be no closer than 18 feet to the property line. In this case, if you'll reference the drawings, due to the placement of the home on a peculiar setting, the porch and steps are at their closest point 2 feet from the east property line. Therefore, the petitioner is seeking a waiver to allow for that placement of the porch and steps due to their design. The petitioner is also proposing to construct a 980 square foot detached garage, which is accessed from Vincetta. The zoning ordinance does allow for a maximum ground floor area of 800 square feet, no matter the lot size. There is a provision that says that a garage can be 10% of the lot area, but in no instance bigger than 800 square feet. If we take 10% of this lot area, that certainly is far larger than 800 square feet. So the provision of 800 square foot maximum will take precedence. They're seeking a waiver of 180 square feet from that maximum 800-foot ground floor area standard. Subject property is required to have a front yard setback along Murdoch due to the orientation of the properties on the opposite side of Murdoch. The proposed detached garage is located is 10 feet from the north setback along Murdoch. Therefore, the petitioner is seeking a waiver of 15 feet from that minimum 25 to have the garage placed at 10 feet from the property line. The zoning ordinance measures the height of a structure not at the peak, but at the, not at the peak of the roof ridge, but at its highest midpoint. And the highest midpoint is the equal distance between the peak and the eaves of any roof line of the structure. And if we reference the petitioner's elevations for the detached garage, it measures a height of 18.4 feet at its highest midpoint. The zoning ordinance does allow for a garage to maintain a maximum height of 15 feet, but it needs to meet some provisions which require a greater setback. And in this case, the petitioner doesn't meet that standard. So they are seeking a waiver from the basic garage height, we'll say, of 13 feet, of 5.4 feet from the maximum permitted garage height of 13 feet. Those are all the variances, all 6 of them. If you have any questions in particular, there are some photographs of the site, survey and drawings, and I believe there is also a letter from an adjacent property owner that's attached to your packet as well.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Kroll?
Yes, Joseph. With the exception of the first variance to waive 882 square feet, if you turn this house toward Lloyd or toward Murdoch, would they need any of the rest of the variances?
I didn't see a particular sketch concept from the petitioner to illustrate that he had, we'll say, done that homework, done that analysis. Perhaps he'd be able to better answer that. It appears as though it might be able to, but he would be able to provide you with maybe some insight on that. Maybe from a pure standpoint of, we'll say, picking up that gray outline and just twisting and turning it and setting it back in. There may be more to it. If you notice, that property does have a difference in elevation or maybe some.
Where was the house located on this property before? I remember.
Top of the hill.
Top of the hill.
Yeah, it was back on the north side. I'm sorry, west side.
Thank you.
Mr. Clapp?
Joseph, does the dormer impact the overall garage height, or is that just the main roof?
It is, we measure to the highest midpoint. So the main roof line of the garage has a midpoint. The dormers certainly have a midpoint. The dormers have a higher midpoint.
Sure.
So we do take the highest midpoint, in this case, the dormers.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Is the petitioner present?
Good evening, John Barnett, along with my wife Julie. I'm going to start out by just giving you a little bit of background about ourselves. My wife and I are lifetime Royal Oak residents, local business owners. She runs a nonprofit organization out of the city, and I have a full-time real estate business at Keller Williams in downtown Royal Oak. We're both engaged, active, contributing members of this community, a product of Royal Oak schools, and plan to send our children through as well. In addition, we own a Royal Oak-based construction company and have built more than 60 homes within the city of Royal Oak. Of those 60 homes, 0 of them have ever been in front of this board for a variance. The reason that we are here today is because the lot that we're planning on building our personal residence on is a pretty unique lot that we believe is going to require a few variances to build what we would like. So I'm going to go one by one down the variances to kind of address each one individually. Total square footage. We have a large family in today's standards. We also have a very large extended family who also live in Royal Oak. We're constantly entertaining and hosting events. We purchased quite a large lot within the city in hopes of building our forever home. This is not investment property. This is for our personal residence. We're looking to build a house that is, according to the documents, 4,382 square feet. 882 square feet over the allowable 3,500 square foot limit. But what I want to point out is that 560 square feet of that 882 is actually a third floor attic. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the only reason that that square footage is counted is because we have a staircase and not a pull-down ladder. If we had a pull-down ladder, that square footage would not be included in the total square footage. I don't know if any of you have ever had that type of an entrance to an attic. We had one at our previous house. It is wobbly, it is very small. Getting anything up and down it is quite treacherous, so we're trying to avoid that. one of the reasons that we want to store a lot of our belongings on the third floor instead of the basement is because we currently live 8 doors down from this property and lived there during the Great Flood of 2014. I know that our personal residence, we lost an enormous amount of irreplaceable family heirlooms that are gone and will never be replaced. Our lot during this flood, I wish I had a picture, was about halfway submerged underwater, the entire lot that you're looking at here. So it's important to us to try to find a way to store stuff above our space as opposed to below in the event that something like this would ever to occur in the future. Just a few facts. There are currently 56 homes within the city of Royal Oak that exceed 3,500 square feet. And of those, 47 are actually on smaller lots than ours, just to put things in context for you. Our proposed square footage on the first floor is 2243. If you add that to the garage that we're proposing at 980, it gives you a total of 3223 square feet. If you divide that by the lot size, which is 22,519, it's actually around 15% lot coverage. The city does allow 30%. So we're actually not even half of what you're allowed to cover. Just to put some context as far as when we're talking size of the house, we are about half the coverage as your typical lot in Royal Oak. Okay, that's pretty much it as far as the square footage item goes. So moving on to the front yard setback. 2209 Vincetta is a very unique triangular lot within the city. It's bordered by 3 streets, and it also contains a pretty significant grade change. We've owned this house for about 5 years, I believe, and since then we have done quite a bit of landscaping to the lot. We've regraded, planted a lot of trees. The reason we want our new home positioned at the bottom of the hill, we just feel that it is more inviting to the neighborhood. We kind of feel like we're already disconnected being on a so-called island. So we feel by pulling it up to the front of Vincetta as opposed to how the previous house was up at the top, that we're going to be connected a little bit more to the neighborhood. Also, our backyard, so I'll kind of address one of the questions that was asked about repositioning. We have been working on this set of prints for about 5 years. This is not something we threw together overnight. We have positioned and repositioned this house. Turning the house does not help some of the variances that were in question. The biggest struggle with this lot comes with the lot line. And I'll get to that in a second, but because we're close to the intersection of Crooks and Vincetta, if any of you are familiar with that neighborhood, it's a very busy intersection. Crooks is obviously a main road, and Vincetta is a pretty common cut-through. So because we're very close to that intersection, we currently have 3 young children. It is important to us to have ample backyard space for them to play in. And even though this looks like a very large lot, when you figure out the buildable area and actual backyard that you're left with, it's pretty small. Considering, and I would prefer my children to not be playing in the front yard as much as possible, just from a security standpoint. So in addressing the lot lines, most lot lines within the city, and I've built several homes, and Joseph can probably attest to this as well, most lot lines in the city start about 1 foot off the sidewalk. That's pretty typical. This, if you notice, the dark line, the solid line, is the lot line on this lot, which is quite a bit different than 1 foot off the sidewalk, which is what you can see that kind of curves around. So most lots or most houses would sit back 26 feet from the front sidewalk. You have your 1 foot till the property line starts, and then you have your 25-foot setback. So what we're proposing, even with this 23-foot variance, is that we're still going to be 35 feet back from the sidewalk, which is still 10 feet bigger than your average home within the city. The porch setback, like Joseph said, it's pretty tied to the front yard setback. You are allowed to come in 7 feet into that front yard setback. We're not trying to do anything other than that. This porch is 7 feet, just like any other house that we've built in the city. So the front yard setback, when that reduces by the 23 feet, so does the front porch. They kind of go hand in hand. Okay, garage size. So what we're proposing is a 980 square foot 3-car garage, which is 180 square feet larger than the 800 square foot requirement by the city. The garage that we're proposing takes up about 4.4% of our total lot size, which is less than the city's 10% maximum. Now, there is a rule that does say that it is 10% or 800 square feet, whichever is smaller. So we are unfortunately maxed out at that 800, but just to put into context, even by expanding it to 980, we're still less than half the size of most allowable garage coverages within the city of Royal Oak. We currently have a 3-car where we live now. Unfortunately, we are only able to park 2 cars in it, and we do own 3 vehicles. I have a vehicle, she has a vehicle, and then we have a vehicle that we drive in the summer. Unfortunately, I'm the one that is out of the garage space. So all winter, I'm scraping snow off my car while our summer car obviously is stored, plus my wife's vehicle. And if all of you or some of you have children, you will know that there is a lot of stuff that you require in a garage. We don't use our garage for storage. We're not storing off-season stuff or anything that isn't used on a regular basis. But just between bikes, strollers, wagons, I do my own yard and snow removal. So snow blower, lawnmower, weed whipper, blower, edger. Those things just take up a lot of space, not to mention just your basic yard tools. So what we would really like is the ability to have a garage that not only can have those basics, but also fit 3 vehicles for a couple reasons. The intersection or the stretch of Vincetta that you're looking at, you don't really have a big enough picture, but it's kind of a hidden curve as you're coming off of Crooks, and it's kind of a narrow street. So as you round the corner, you don't really have the visibility on like a normal straight street. So what we're trying to avoid is a lot of our guests parking on the street and allowing them to park in our driveway. If our cars are then in the garage, we free up some driveway space for our guests so that they're not forced to park in the street. You're getting out of your car and you have cars kind of zooming around Vincetta. So it serves a lot of functions. Even just that little bit of space, we believe would allow us to get the actual 3 vehicles inside the garage. Side yard setback. As I mentioned before, we have a very unique triangular lot. We have no next door neighbors, backyard neighbors. The lot's completely bordered by Vincetta, Lloyd, and Murdoch. It is my understanding that the city's 25-foot front yard setback is designed so that no one builds a home that encroaches on their neighbor's visibility. However, because the homes on Murdoch face our lot, technically we're subject to a 25-foot setback along that road. That provision further encroaches on our buildable area, which we believe is not really applicable to our unique lot because we don't have any neighbors that we would be blocking out visually by taking that 25 back to a 10-foot and creating more of a side yard setback versus a rear. Finally, garage height. So we are in need of a variance because of the dormer on the garage. If the dormer didn't exist, we would not need the variance. I'm not sure if you can show a picture, but if you look at the front elevation of the house, there you go, of the house and the garage, a couple reasons that we feel the dormer is important. Number one, for aesthetics. You're breaking up the roof line. It ties it into the house a little bit better. On top of that, we're planning on using above the garage for storage, and just from a head height perspective, when you're moving around in a garage that has a roof line that is gabled without any dormers, it just creates a lot smaller space for storage, actually being able to walk around and move boxes. So I also believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph, but if this garage was attached, I would not need this variance. Technically, we are attached by roof line, but I believe the city still considers this a detached structure outside of living space. So if it was attached, am I wrong by saying that? I don't even think this variance would be in question. And you can discuss that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I believe it's because it's considered a detached garage that the height restriction comes into play. So the dormer, again, we think matches the aesthetics of the home, plus trying to maximize head height in the storage above. My wife is a chemical engineer, so she could bore you with details of why a detached garage is better for health reasons and the emissions that your car still gives off after turning off, but we'll spare that. But we have decided that so we've decided that a detached garage is the best fit for our personal family, which is why we decided to go on a detached instead of an attached. So really just in closing, I mean, we believe that we have a very unique lot within the city. We do have a few very brief letters, hold on, from some of our neighbors. If time permits, very quickly, could we just read maybe 1 or 2 of them?
Actually, just hand them to Ms. Zukin, and
Okay,
we'll look
I
at them
do
as we're
think that
reviewing everything.
it's important to brief those over, especially the one on top. This is from the previous owner of this lot, who came in front of this board a few years ago, was granted several variances, but ended up not building the project. Let's just say life happened, and he wasn't able to pursue the project. So after, he ended up selling the lot to us, and he is now our neighbor just a couple doors down on Vincetta. So all of those people that wrote this letter are within a few houses of our lot. They're all neighbors of ours, and they're all in support of the project.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the petitioner at this point?
John, I had a quick question. You said there's no point at which the front of your structures are within, did you say 35 feet of the sidewalk?
So if you go, I don't have that page. Yeah, you can go back. So if you look at the garage, the way it's oriented is 25 feet from the sidewalk.
Thank you.
The house itself is 35 feet from the sidewalk. A typical setback in Royal Oak is 26 from the sidewalk. House and garage.
Did I see a hand over here?
Yes, please,
sir.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Farhat. And I appreciate that you did a lot of, thinking and research and, for the 5 years they were looking at the plans. My only question would be, and I'm sure this might be yes, but have you thought about putting the garage facing Murdoch behind the house? And that didn't.
Yeah, so we have spent quite some time orienting and reorienting this house. One of a few challenges of facing the garage to Murdoch is the way that you can, when you come out of your driveway, where you can turn in relation to, there's like a one-way kind of turn.
Yeah, if you pan out, you can see the turnaround again.
So a couple different reasons. One is getting in and out of the garage, but two, looking at that structure, if we were to put the garage on let's just say the door on the back side, the front side now, you could throw some windows on so it would look more like house. We feel that would make the structure look even larger if you pan over to maybe a front view elevation. I think the garage doors, I don't know if it's up or down, but we did look at opening it to Murdoch, and I think that to kind of designate that more as a garage space, if we took those doors off, put them on the backside, and just put some windows on the front, I think it just kind of adds to what appears the large size of the house, which I don't think is helping our case.
Okay. And I like how the house faces Vincetta. I think that's appropriate. But when you look on Vincetta, you look at the other homes, the homes on Vincetta, the detached garages are usually behind the house. Unless they're attached to the house, you usually have the garage. I feel like it looks a bit imposing with, the large house and then the large garage. If it could be behind on Murdoch, I understand, but I think it would help. It is a large piece of property. I do think it merits a large house. I think that it's appropriate for the scale.
Do you mean just moving the doors to the back or reorienting the garage?
Yeah, moving the garage back somehow to be sort of behind.
So what I would just ask is if you or anyone on the board is proposing that, give me an idea of where we could reposition this, because we're already even requiring a variance of 15 feet on that front yard setback, even to get the tip of that garage. So I guess it hinges on other variances if we were going to reposition the garage. It would not be my preference, because my goal is to have a roof line that connects the house. I mean, if it were up to me, the garage would be attached. Winters, snow, rain, security, I would like it to be attached, but we're going back and forth, and this is one that I'm going to cave on. Want
us to give you 5 or something?
No, I won't win that argument. But what I feel important is to have a roof line that connects the house and garage. So if it is snowing or raining, at least we're protected from the elements. So when we're talking about reorienting the garage and where it sits, I'm not saying no that we couldn't do it, but I would want to be assured that there's an orientation that could still allow a roof structure to connect the two. And obviously still look aesthetically pleasing to the neighborhood.
Right, and I don't want to tell you, exactly how to design your property. It's just that with the variance with the oversized garage and the exceeding the height limit, I just feel like it's a lot of presence just, especially with the detached garage there. But, and in terms of the other variances, I'll save my comments for later.
And if the issue was with the height, if we removed the dormer off the garage, we would not need a height variance. I think it adds to the aesthetics of the house personally, as well as the space above. But if I have to eliminate it to make it work, it's something that I would consider.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner? Yes, sir.
You said the house is no closer than 35 feet to the sidewalk, yet at the front there, right by the porch, that actually looks like it's less than 35 because on the site where you have the nursery, that's at 35. So when you go closer, that appears less than 35. The only questions I had is, and I understand the 5 years at it, why at this location, why not just a little bit farther back, like another 5 or 10 feet off of that, as well as why not a couple of feet, whether it be 5 feet or somewhat, of the garage being a little closer to the house so that you're not as close to that, need as much variance on that side.
Sure. So to address your first question, why didn't we set the house 5 or 10 feet further back? Again, it's important to us to maintain as large of a backyard space instead of front yard space. So every foot that I'm moving it back, I'm obviously gaining front yard and losing backyard. We're in need of a 23-foot variance of the 25 feet. So moving it 5 feet back, I would still be asking for 18 feet. So it was our goal to maximize the size of our backyard, but if the board felt that a few more feet made a difference, it's something that we would definitely consider. And your question, why we're not having the garage closer to the house, the idea is to have the entire backyard fenced in for the security of our children. And so we're trying to get traffic to flow into our backyard through the space between the house and the garage. Right now, I don't have that measurement, but I believe it's about 8 feet. I might look in some papers and get back to you. So by squeezing that, just the flow of traffic to get to a backyard at some point, when you're between two decent-sized structures, you don't want to feel like you're squeezing something in there or walking down like an alley or something. So we were just trying to make it pleasing from a traffic flow standpoint. But again, if moving the garage a couple feet you felt was important, it's something that we would consider working with you on.
Any other?
Looking if the kids would take their bikes through that gate, park in the backyard versus having them laying all over the driveway, you know what I mean? So kids can easily get their bikes back through there and park them in our backyard.
Are there any other questions from the petitioner at this point? All right, not seeing any, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing, but before you two sit down, procedurally, they need 5 out of 7 votes. We are 2 members short. It is certainly your prerogative to table this until next month, until there's a full board. Right now, like Mr. Murphy pointed out, you need 5 out of 7.
So a couple questions to that. The variance before us only needed 4, did I hear? And is there a reason that there's a difference?
State law.
Sure, they were seeking a waiver from the fence ordinance.
Okay.
So the fence ordinance is governed by the general quorum standards. The Michigan Zoning Enabling Act requires 2/3 of the board members present, very specific, and then it's present not in the board in totality, which is 9, those present, which is 7.
So, obviously there's no way to guarantee the attendance of the next meeting or the one after that or the one after that. I've been to several of these and I know it's a crapshoot. So respectfully, I would say we're just going to roll with it.
All right, very good.
So.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the zoning board on this issue? Yes, sir.
Dan Hudson. I'm at 1217 Lloyd, which is Lloyd and Larome, and right on the corner of this property. Overall, I see this as a great improvement. The previous home actually faced west and had a driveway that was on Murdoch and was very awkward. It's been gone for a few years, so things have improved. Right there. So my house would be off on the lower left-hand corner there that you can't see. Down a bit, across the street, there you go. I see a lot of good merits on some of his variances he's requesting. I personally have a 3-car garage that's 780 square feet, and I can barely fit 3 cars in it, particularly the size of today's pickup trucks. So I will be envious of his garage space, because 2 or 3 feet in every space just makes things a whole lot more comfortable. Also, during the flood of 2014, probably a third of this property down by Vincetta was underwater at one time. So it does surprise me a little bit that he wants to build there, but it's a very much a nice part of Vincetta on the rest of the 100 years that it probably floods. So I'm glad to see that it's brick. I'm glad to see that he's planned for this in a very usable attic in both his garage and his house. Because I know he was very traumatized by, he got quite a bit of water in his current house on the Rhone during that event. So overall, I see a lot of good reasons for his variances, and just let the board know that I support it.
Great, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? All right, not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to make a motion to approve all 6 variances.
We have a motion by Mr. Kroll.
I'll actually second that motion.
Supported by Mr. Klatt. Go ahead, sir. Is there anything you want to add to your motion?
One of the criteria for a hardship, I guess wherever you are, is odd-shaped property. We hear a lot about them. We see very few of them, and this, in fact, is an odd-shaped property. Whenever you have frontage on in that many directions, a couple things, quite honestly, bother me. I think they're asking for a lot. However, I also live in that neighborhood. As I stood there and looked at that, it's certainly wide enough. I think one of the things that I met with Joe on this the other day, and one of the things that I didn't really understand was how far away from the street it is. So I think a lot of the variances kind of suggest that it's closer to the street, and in fact, it's pushed back. So I guess you could argue the garage should be in back, should be in front. I do think from a design point of view, it works. I would have liked to have seen it attached better, probably, but I don't want to get in the middle of that argument. So for those reasons, I think it's a reasonable use. I think many of the different things that have come in before this have been trying to split this into 2, 3 properties. I think it's a beautiful piece of property, kind of set in a very unique setting, and I think what they're proposing is fair.
Any other comments on the motion? Yes, sir.
Well, I do think the house is sited properly. I think it addresses the street well, as well as the topography. It does climb up quite a bit there, so I think it is sited well. Thank you for the explanation. I was on the fence with items A, D, and E, but until you explain that well, I have a better sense of what you're trying to do with the garage. You know, I do think the house and the massing works well together, so I think the size of the garage is appropriate for the house.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little conflicted on this one. I do see the hardship because of the triangle shapes, the setbacks because the way the property lines are drawn, I don't have that much of a problem with. The problem I'm having is the size. The ordinance is 3,500 square feet for the house, 800 for the garage. A lot of people would like a bigger one. I don't see a hardship in meeting those criteria, also the height criteria. My other big concern was the other neighbors on Lloyd and Murdoch and Vincetta, because all those houses are smaller, but nobody's here to oppose it. So that's where my conflict, and I'd like to hear what other people have to say.
If I might just counter that, somehow, I had a big problem with that too, but seeing that 800 or most of the 800 feet is upstairs, if you put, as we stated, if you put a fold-down staircase in, it's not a variance, it's acceptable. So, I mean, to me, the real question here is, kind of makes sense to me with everybody's basement lined up on Vincetta there, that they're taking the steps to know there's a problem area and addressing it on the front end.
But I know there's been other houses where there's been a third floor issue, and as long as they didn't have the staircase, it was permitted. The staircase, I guess, is what's making the difference. Because it could be used as, what difference does it make, I guess? It's what goes on inside, so.
Well, I think certainly the lot is large enough to handle it.
Yes, sir.
I think I understood that if there were no staircase, there would still be a small variance on the overall square footage. With the staircase, there's a little bit bigger variance on the overall.
300 without the staircase. With the staircase, it brings it to like 800.
Yeah, of course, I'm interested in continuity in neighborhoods, and so it matters that when there's a really big house next to a bunch of smaller houses, that kind of can infringe on the lifestyle of the people next to those houses. But again, we have a very unique property here in that it is set apart, as we said, an island unto itself, and I'm inclined to support the variance because I think it is such a unique property and makes for a wonderful front door to the neighborhood, so to speak.
It is an interesting property. It's a very large property. Like I said before, the size of the house I think is appropriate for this, the size of the property. It might actually be the biggest house and garage on Vincetta, period. It may be.
No, not even close.
Really? Okay. Looking at the aerial photographs, it certainly seemed to run a pretty close race. But be that as it may, I guess I'm still struggling with just the size of the garage that's, right up front, but, maybe there's no other place to put it. So I guess that's all I got.
Did I see your answer?
Yeah, I'm also a little bit conflicted because this is a very large lot, and I do agree that sometimes our ordinances are penalizing those with large lots in the sizes of stuff. The house size, yes, if you took out the attic, it's within 10% of going over the ordinance on a lot that's, 4 times the size of the ordinance. I sort of think it's a little weird that they're putting a basement on a lot that they knew that floods, but hey, I guess that's his fault if anything goes bad down there. The garage size is a little bit larger than what I want, even though it's a large lot, but I could I could live with all these in a way, but I also can see how it's oversized too. So I'm a little bit conflicted still.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and chime in. I've gone back and forth on this one in my head numerous times. Frankly, I've gone back and forth in my head 5 times in the last 15 minutes. But I think the one number that I keep looking at that's sort of sticking in my head is the fact that we have a lot that is 22,520 square feet and a home with a practical footprint of 2243, or roughly 10%. So when I think about the massing of this home in relation to the size of the lot, I don't think they're doing any injustice to the neighborhood. So even though I have gone back and forth, and clearly wanting a bigger house and wanting more attic space and wanting a 3-car garage, none of those are hardships, obviously. Those are desires. So in terms of actually creating practical hardships, I don't think they exist. The setback issues, that's a whole other thing. I think Ms. Zukin talked about that. But at the end of the day, I think the size of this home is reasonable given the size of the property. So for that reason, I'm going to be supporting the motion. Yes, sir.
And I understand your thing, and I actually think the hardships is, even though you think there's no hardships created, the hardships is the fact that, like you brought up, is the large lot size on there, and that people with large lots get penalized into everyone has small lots. So that's what sort of leans me more that direction. It's just still a little bit concerned about like the garage height and and stuff, but, and how close it is to the one side, when it could have been maybe just a little bit better.
Oh, I've got Mr. Clapp first. Then I'll get to you, sir.
I would say the practical difficulty is the irregular shape. I mean, it's
Right.
it's a pie-shaped lot. And even though it is a large lot, the building footprint is, I want to say quite small, but it's impacted quite a bit. So back to my original point, I think it is cited appropriately.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask that question about the height of the garage. The presenter sort of began to ask a question about had it not had a dormer in the design, would there still need to be a variance on the height of the garage from your understanding, Joseph?
Fortunately, the drawings,
It's hard
I'm
to say.
looking. Yeah, the drawings don't note the midpoint of the main roof peak, not the dormer. So I don't know that without taking a paper copy with a scale to it. And maybe Mr. Farha has some idea as to what that number might be on the main roof line of the proposed detached garage, not the height at the midpoint, which is referenced on the drawings, which is correct.
I don't have that number on me, but it is my belief that if the dormer was not there, the garage height variance would not be needed. But just so, and Joseph can expand on this so you understand how the midpoint is figured out, as soon as that dormer goes on, the midpoint is completely different from top to bottom. It's now considered, all I'm really looking at is the dormer roof as opposed to the garage roof. So it is the dormer is the reason for the height variance. If it wasn't, then one would not be needed. That's correct.
And I'll point to this cross section, this elevation. We're measuring the midpoint approximately in this location, the midpoint from this point to this point. If that was missing, if the dormers were missing, we would be measuring from the peak to the eaves here, probably somewhere in this neighborhood. So whatever that
So from a height
difference is.
standpoint, I don't believe that the garage is going to be any shorter. It's just the shape of the roof line.
Yeah, that's what I thought I understood in that discussion, and I like the dormer from an aesthetic point of view, matching the house's dormer. I don't know that removing the dormer adds to this situation from the city's perspective, I think. So again, I'm inclined to support.
There are no other comments, then I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Who are the two nays?
Chris?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. You're all set.
Thank you.
All right, let me move along here. All right, that moves us along to our third item of new business, item number D3, which is case number 170615, a public hearing on the appeal of Berman Company and Howard Friedlander, petitioner and owner for the following variance: waive 2 feet of the minimum required drive aisle width of 20 feet to permit modifications of an existing parking lot located at 27844 through 27942 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Murphy.
This is a multi-tenant shopping center, and the petitioner is proposing to remove several parking spaces and create a continuous two-way drive aisle between the entrance drive and exit along Woodward Avenue. And you can see that on the screen in front of you. The entrance drive is further to the south, and the exit drive is to the north. And we'll look at some photographs as well. Currently, there are parking spaces in this location, and the petitioner is proposing to create a drive aisle. And I'll go ahead and reference the photographs that are in the report. They'll be helpful. So right now, there is currently a drive aisle from the entrance to the south. The petitioner is proposing to modify this location, which there are now parking spaces, and there are parking spaces along this side, so that there's a continuous drive aisle through the site. And the petitioner is proposing to do that for better traffic flow for the patrons that are going to the businesses at that location. The drive aisle that they're going to create, which is a two-way drive aisle, requires a minimum width of 18 feet, according to their engineer drawings, they're proposing to have a drive aisle that's, or rather, it's required to be minimum, they're proposing to have a drive aisle 18 feet. So they're seeking a waiver of that slight difference to the minimum drive aisle width. You'll see the photographs, hopefully they're photographs are quality of demonstrating what's there, and the sketch to illustrate what the petitioner is proposing. So you'll see a modification to the curb, which is close to the sign, the current sign that the petitioner has, and they'd be protecting the sign via the curb as well as some barricades, a guardrail, I should say.
Any questions for staff at this point? I'll start with Ms. Zukin.
Mr. Murphy, do you know how many parking spots they are going to remove to allow this?
I don't recall. It's been a while since I
think
did the numbers out.
It looks like 6.
I went out there just now.
Because 1,
Yeah, I
2,
walked
Some other,
it, but
they're
I
picking up
couldn't
some
tell.
other parking spaces in some striping modifications that they're doing to the site. They'd be picking up some other modifications
this is a two-way
on the
aisle.
opposite sides of the building.
See,
And
this is the killer.
What is the general parking?
Folks, we got too many people talking at once. Go ahead, ma'am.
And will the egress and ingress stay the same? Only one way in and one way out on Woodward
Correct. And those changes were done
recently?
recently, we'll say, and that was based on design standards and requirements of the Michigan Department of Transportation in the Woodward Avenue right-of-way.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Joseph, is this still parked appropriately for the ordinance?
Yes, and we actually had an ordinance change a couple of years ago that allowed for a reduced parking amount for a parking standard for a shopping center, and this particular development meets that standard. So they do have an excess of parking spaces per the ordinance requirement. Not a whole lot, but they do have an excess per the ordinance requirements.
They don't have any excess spaces, though.
Yes, he can address that as well.
I live over there.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy at this point? All right, not seeing any. Are the petitioners present?
Good evening. Howard Friedlander, on behalf of the Woodward Commercial Center at 27844 to 27942 Woodward. I do have some boards that will better illustrate kind of what's existing and what we're proposing. I've also got 8.5 by 11 sheets of that. I don't know if
There's an easel right over there if you want to grab it and set your boards up.
Okay.
Actually, if you could move it to the side so in case we need a visual access to the monitor there. There you go. Thank you, sir.
Is this good?
Perfect.
Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Sorry about those of you in the audience, but picking up on the...
Yeah, there's a TV.
Okay. Let me give a little background here. This is the entire shopping center. And by way of history, this shopping center was not...
That's okay.
It'll be gifted.
Okay. The shopping center was not developed as we see it. This is really a put together of 4 different projects that had all been developed separately in the 1940s and 50s, with maybe the latest changes coming in the 60s. The O'Reilly, PPG, and PetSmart was what my group originally owned. My grandfather and grandmother left that behind. They built that late 40s, early 50s. It was a grocery store and drugstore. I'm 3rd generation. We've got 5th generation now, family ownership. And over the last several decades, we had the opportunity to expand the property and buy what used to be the Englander's Other Place furniture store, which is now Trader Joe's, Ross Mortgage, and Ulta Beauty. Then we had the opportunity to buy a building that we knocked down further to the south from Royal Oak Ford. It had been occupied by the Woodward Avenue Action Association for a period of time. That gave us more parking at that end. Then we had the opportunity to acquire the Sherwin-Williams paint store at the north end. So all of these properties had been already developed. They all had their own curb cuts on Woodward or Catalpa. And the goal that we had was, how do we harmonize this and make it like a center, even though we can't, start from scratch. So over the last couple of years, we've made some major improvements, and part of that involved the curb cuts along Woodward. The curb cuts were in poor condition for many years, and when we asked MDOT has jurisdiction over the right-of-way along with the city of Royal Oak, and when we asked MDOT, could we repave these entries because they were breaking up, and we were getting a lot of complaints, MDOT said, no, you can't. We want you to remove them, and their solution was put one curb cut in between Trader Joe and O'Reilly, put one curb cut between over here south of Alta, which would have taken a lot of parking spaces away, and it would have eliminated the ability to have the monument ground signs that are so important to tenants. If I had done that, I would have been in violation of several of our leases that required us to have those signs and required us not to change the circulation. After a couple of years of discussion with MDOT and the city, we mutually agreed that we could keep the curb cuts, but we needed to have one way in, one way out at both of these locations, as well as designating the Sherwin-Williams curb cut as in only. We did that, and O'Reilly was very unhappy about that. I explained to them there was no choice, that this was something that we had to agree to, or we couldn't maintain the property as we needed to. And O'Reilly asked me if we could consider taking out some parking spaces here, because by making, and now I'll flip to the next sheet, which is just basically a blow up of this area that we're talking about. But I wanted you to see the whole thing. So this is, oops, I flipped 2 pages instead of 1. Okay, right now we have the monument sign here, and O'Reilly complained saying cars come in here. We used to have two-way traffic there, so cars could come in right by O'Reilly. Once we made these one-way, O'Reilly said, okay, cars come in here by Trader Joe, but to get to our store, they have to circulate way around. Which, I said, I understand. Customers will get used to it, but I promised the head of real estate for O'Reilly that I would explore this. I didn't make any promises, but I said I'll explore it. Then I consulted with our traffic engineer, Mike Labadie, with Vandenbrink and Fleiss. He's with me as well, so if you have questions in a bit, we are both available. Anyhow, After looking at it, I could see that in order to do what O'Reilly was proposing, we would lose 4 parking spaces, which are in yellow, and we'd make this island smaller, which is not a problem. Now I'll flip to what it would be like as proposed. Also, I'll digress and say when we worked things out with MDOT, part of the requirement was not only having these be one-way in and out, we lost 8 parallel parking spaces in front of the north building. While that may not seem like a big number, we've got, I don't know how many exactly, but a couple 100+ parking spaces. If you've ever gone to the center, the parking lot is fully utilized, and parking spaces are very important, and the ability to circulate around, because a lot of the customers are in and out, so parking spaces are always freeing up. So by taking these 4 spaces away and making this island smaller, we now have the ability to do the same thing that we already have here, where we've got 2-way traffic and circulation. Now it extends there. So people could get straight to O'Reilly, but not as just good for customers coming straight for O'Reilly. It helps the circulation in the entire parking lot. When a lot of cars are leaving onto Woodward, the cars can stack up here by O'Reilly, and if cars can also be exiting here from other parts of the lot, we decrease the stacking in all locations. The area that we're asking the variance for is waiving the 2 feet from the required 20-foot minimum for 2-way traffic. The distance that we would have the variance for is 28.94 feet, so we'll call that 29 feet, about 1.5 car lengths. Visibility here from all directions is excellent, so there's no concern cars aren't going to see what's happening, and we believe that this will allow circulation to be much better. It will allow people to navigate the parking lot much easier, and be glad to answer any questions. I didn't have my notes while I was saying that, so I don't know if I forgot anything.
Are there any questions for the petitioner at this point? Yes, sir.
I understand the 2-way direction, why you're going for that, but going with the 18 feet, that a person's going to normally park right there next to that 18 feet, so you're already crunching up with a person opening up a door too. It makes it seem like it could be very unsafe. Would it have not been better to just take out another 2 spots there and give yourself a little bit more buffer? Either that or only go one direction going towards O'Reilly to still leave yourself a buffer between a parking spot and the drive lane. I've shopped very frequently at Trader Joe's, so I'm very familiar with the wait and see of trying to nab a spot as someone's pulling out, because people are always going in and out there constantly. But I'm just worried about how safe it would be with a narrowed down aisle there.
Well, safety is obviously essential. When I explored the idea and consulted with our traffic engineer, that was my question, is, can we do this and have it be safe? Because obviously I wouldn't want to propose it if it was not. We believe it is safe. It's a very short distance that it narrows down, and there's very good visibility, and traffic in this part of the parking lot, there's no way that people are going to be going real fast. So I don't...
Did you ever consider just one direction, though?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever just consider one-way direction towards O'Reilly instead of the 2-way right there?
that would be a way to deal with it, but it would not be as desirable as having two-way traffic. We could also take more parking spaces away, but again, we're challenged for adequate parking. Losing 4 on top of the 8 that we lost, that's a dozen parking spaces. That's it's a big deal.
I understand.
So that's why I'm here.
Are there any other questions?
Would you like some input from our traffic engineer? Anyhow,
Actually, I do have a couple questions, but I want to have them bounced off staff at the same time that I'm asking you, just so we have proper clarification. He should be back here any second. He just had to run out for a minute. And the one question would be, I think Anthony may have discovered the kryptonite in terms of going with a one-way direction and then creating an island, because I fully agree with you that having traffic right next to parked cars without any sort of island as a buffer is a prescription for problems, because you can see obviously everywhere else you've got islands in separation as you should have.
Right.
I just don't know in terms of the zoning ordinance if that would be acceptable as an alternative, and without him here I just can't get that question answered. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, I think two-way is critical. Well, not critical, but I think it's important there, because as I noticed when I pulled in the lot, and as you're committed to going east along O'Reilly, once you're down that lane, there's no backing out unless you try to back into a spot and come back around. So you're committed to exiting Woodward to get back in the lot. So I think you do need an escape to head south. So I think two-way is essential. I'm concerned about the congestion. 18 does seem tight when there's a lot going on in that intersection right there.
I don't think you can get any more congested than it is now.
Anyway, so while you were away, Anthony had thrown out the idea that in the highlighted area there, having traffic going in one direction only towards O'Reilly, so that the width of that area isn't being so compressed with two-way traffic and cars right next door, parked right immediately next door without any buffer. Is there any issues that staff would have if we were to throw around the idea of possibly just having that one area be one-way only going toward O'Reilly?
If the petitioner was acceptable to that idea, then there'd be no waiver that would be needed, because a one-way drive only requires 12-foot aisleway.
Right.
One way requires 12, but
12.
two ways requires 20.
Make that a motion.
Interesting. All right. Any other questions for the petitioner at this point? All right. Not saying any, sir. I'm going to ask you to take a seat real quickly just so I can open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the ZBA on this? Yeah, please come to the microphone, sir.
I'm not part of the public hearing. I'm Mike Labadie. I would like, the way I was looking at this is that the trade-off between, is a little bit of a compromise, but the trade-off between people doing weird things because they are committed and they can't get out, in other words, you can't stay in the parking lot, versus having a skinny aisleway, or a little bit skinny aisleway. I thought that was a good trade-off. In fact, it's a real good trade-off from a safety standpoint, because what happens when you do? They back up and they turn around, they don't want to do what they want. So it's an interesting challenge, I'll give you that. And I also think that if you come up there, I don't know if they're going to try to have two cars pass side by side anyway. You'd probably wait and let the other guy go by. So I'm sort of thinking that circulation is a better thing than leaving it one way or leaving it out altogether. So that was my thinking on it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. All right, let me go back to the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address us on this matter? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Mike McCulloch, 1820 Bassett. I want to echo a couple of the concerns of the board members here. I live about a block and a half. I go to Trader Joe's all the time. Mr. Kroll, you're absolutely correct. That parking lot cannot get more congested. So what happens is cars try to come in off of Woodward and head east, and traffic backs up onto Woodward, and then you've got customers that are in the parking lot trying to get into Trader Joe's, so the cars have to stop for them and the shopping carts and so forth. So then what they do is they whip going north using this lane that they propose to use. Now they want to make it two-way, and they do it quite fast. I've seen it happen. I've had to, get out of the way for the motorists as they come by. And so if you make it a two-way where you've got circulation from traffic off of Woodward and then traffic headed from an eastward direction along O'Reilly, it's going to be a mess. I think you'd be better off if you made it a one-way aisle, as was suggested. I think that if you add two-way traffic and grant a variance in this respect, you're making that parking lot less safe, not more safe, and you're also going to make it more congested. If somebody comes down heading in a westward direction along O'Reilly and can't find a parking spot, they can go out on Woodward and re-enter off of Catalpa. You know that entrance is there, and they can look for a parking spot that way. There's no reason why you should allow them to turn south in that parking lot and further congest the Trader Joe traffic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else? All right, not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. I'll start with Mr. Kroll.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm going to make a motion to approve this.
We have a motion by Mr. Kroll, supported by Mr. Gruba. Go ahead.
As a designer, planner, and live across the street from this, I just scratched my head. The problem is too many successful businesses in one place, quite honestly, and that's a great problem to have. I think you have to understand, and living close to Woodward, you understand the dynamics of Woodward. Cars going 75 miles an hour, missing the first turn, trying to get into the second one, but that's one way going the other way. And then they turn down Catalpa, and they're in my neighborhood. So the thought that everybody can turn down, I mean, the congestion that place causes on Catalpa, people don't really understand, but there isn't any other way to go. To me, I think there needs to be a way in and out of this, and a one-way doesn't, in my mind, solve the problem. It certainly probably solves the width of the lane problem, but I don't think it solves the handling and movement of cars through this place. So I think I'd vote for just about anything that I think would be an improvement. I was interested to hear who actually designed this thing. That probably would have been my guess, because it's illogical.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
I think ideally, it would be, one way would be helpful, but I think human nature would dictate that people are going to try and go both ways, down a small aisle, and it's just going to, end up, causing headaches and whatnot. So, given the severity of the congestion there, it's got to be an improvement.
Do you have a comment? Yes, sir.
This is a problem that they're going to be bringing upon themselves by getting this variance if there's any accidents or safety concerns by narrowing down such a small amount from 20 to 18. You got it right there next to someone who's going to be parking. The problem is going to come in Christmas time and Thanksgiving time, I guarantee you. I've sat in that lot a couple times after going around the backside to go to the Riley side to park, waiting just for someone to pull out, because the traffic there's always constant of people going in and out, thanks to Trader Joe. I can't see the benefit of increasing a possible accident outweighs the need for maybe an extra 2 more spots removed or a one-way issue. So I just can't support that. I believe in safety first. So.
Anybody else? Ms. Zukin?
I've always wondered why that island is sticking out there, that peninsula, and it's very frustrating, and I don't go to the store even though it's walking distance, but traffic is bad, and now that it's just one way going in and one way going out, it does back up onto Woodward. So it's needed. And I have the same problem, though, that Anthony has, it's not safe. I hate to see him lose 2 more spaces, because there's already no place to park. But I am concerned about the safety with only the 18 feet.
Well,
go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm concerned about it as well, but I don't really see myself as the safety patrol. I think that they have an obligation to their stores as well as their stores' customers to make it work. I think if it doesn't work, they'll be quickly in front of somebody trying to find something that does work. So to me, this is a better, I don't see any other really option that they brought forth. I think the option they brought forth is better than the one they have.
Well, you're right, we're not the safety patrol, but we are following the ordinance. The ordinance is following MDOT, which is based upon safety, the 20-foot. If you look at it, parking spots are 9 feet wide, so you're basically have 2 parking spots. You're asking for a car to go through. Big SUV, a big truck trying to go by there, there's going to be an accident, probably.
Did you bring an expert to speak on safety? Do you have somebody with you in your group that can speak on the safety of this?
Mike Labadie, Police and Vandenbrink, traffic engineer for almost 40 years. Like I said, it's somewhat of a compromise, but the safety aspect of this, it's better than, if it was 20 feet, we wouldn't even be here. And some of the concerns everybody else is talking about, if we narrowed all of the parking spaces, 4 inches, and you squeezed it all together, then they wouldn't be appropriate either, but you'd end up with a 20-foot aisle. Is it going to be better? No, I don't think so. I don't think that you have a situation where it's somewhat of a compromise, and I think it's better to have this be a 2-way aisle with a skinnier drive than it is to have people doing weird things like having to back up or not wanting to go out onto Woodward again, stuff like that. So I think it is a compromise. Now, the proximity, like I was saying, I think if you're in a big truck and another guy's coming the other way, are you just going to try to squeeze in there and squeeze the guy's door off? Or are you going to wait till he goes by and then go through? You might do that. I think more people would be, people are not as irrational as we all want to think they are sometimes. Although I wish they would stop texting when they're driving, God. So it is a little bit of a compromise, I'll give you that, but it's a compromise for 2 feet versus getting 2-way aisle and better circulation on this site is better. So safety-wise, it's a good thing. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who wants to comment on this?
Well, may I?
Please.
Well, I think it also can add safety in the perspective that without the traffic coming past Trader Joe's and all the shopping carts and pedestrians that are represented there to get to O'Reilly, I mean, it cuts down on traffic in that area where there's a lot of pedestrians. So I think it adds safety in that regard. Sure, 18 feet wide is not quite as safe as 20 feet wide, that's for sure, and our traffic engineer says it's a compromise. I've been in a lot of cities in a lot of countries of the world, and we're talking about when you think 2 cars going in two different directions, you're cutting 2 feet out of that equation. That's 6 inches on each side of each car. I'm inclined to think that people are rational enough to figure out how to fit through there rather than, cause an accident. It may be good to have some signage, though, that points out that this is not your normal width. I don't know if that's possible as some way to help alleviate the concern, because if you're used to 20 feet and suddenly you see 18 and you haven't had any warning of that, maybe you aren't quite as careful as you need to be.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and chime in. I agree with Anthony on this one. I see a handful of problems. I mean, the cars coming toward each other and one guy having to wait for the other car, that's one argument that I think it's creating a safety hazard that doesn't need to be created if you have the proper width. But more importantly, with traffic flowing right next to where people are throwing car doors open and you have it 2 feet narrower, a car door goes open just, as somebody's going by, and it would be one thing if we were sort of taking one problem and shifting it and making it and alleviating the problem. But what I see is taking something that's bad, and I see it being worse, frankly. I can't support this. I could support, I think, Anthony's idea of having a one-way feeding toward O'Reilly makes sense to me, and I think it would serve the purposes that they're looking for. But 18 foot wide next to where cars are going to be parking and throwing doors open and people trying to go back and forth, I think it's just too narrow, and I agree it's unsafe. Anybody else want to chime in before I call for the vote?
Mr. Murphy, we need 5 affirmative votes for this. Thank you.
And has the petitioner been notified?
Yes, I need to keep, so, sir, before I call for the vote, you are aware that you need 5 affirmative votes out of 7. Do you want us to move forward with the vote, or do you want us to table it until next month, hoping that you have a full board? I should have asked you earlier, I apologize.
We need 5 votes out of 7 here?
Correct.
Well, I heard 2 negative responses.
Well, you can,
Maybe I miscounted.
you can do your own vote counting, but, you know, I'm not inside everybody's head, so.
If we have a result that leaves me dissatisfied, can I come back?
Mr. Murphy?
If the board does not grant the variance request, you would have to wait an entire year to come back with the exact same variance request based on their bylaws.
When's your next meeting? Because part of this is...
Second Thursday of every month.
Oh, okay, because it's a seasonal construction, you know, activity. So whatever we're going to do, since this is outdoor work and curbs and paving, I'm a little concerned. Let me sidebar for a minute.
If they're within 6 of 230.
No, he's fine.
Majority of those persons. He needs 4. So your use requires 2/3. Which is fine.
All right. Before you say anything, let Mr. Murphy re-explain the procedure here.
Apologize. Always challenging when we don't have a full board. You would need majority of those present. Majority of the 7 is 4. So we apologize in noting that it was 5. It's 4. You would need 4.
So we need 4 votes?
At least 4 affirmative votes to grant the variance request. We apologize.
Okay, 4, not 5.
That's correct. And again, I apologize for that.
Let's vote. Let's deal with it now. We're here.
Very good. So I think everything's been hashed out. If nobody else has anything else they want to add, we have a motion to approve the requested.
Can I make one more comment?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Again, the safety issue is really bothering me, but the whole lot is unsafe the way it is. So I don't know that it's worse. And it's a tough one.
That's why you get the big bucks.
Yeah.
I think you cut Woodward out of it, it's got to be safer. This cuts Woodward out of it.
All right, I'm done.
Okay, well, it's decision time, people, so I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the requested variance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
No.
2.
Who are the noes?
2. So it's G2. Motion passes. Variance is granted.
Very good, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so then that moves us along to our next item of new business, item number D4, which is case number 170616, public hearing on the appeal of Horizon Homes petitioner and Anna Spencer, living trust owner, for the following variances: waive 2.3% of the maximum allowable lot coverage of 30%, waive 2.3 feet of the minimum required 33.9 foot north yard setback measured to the principal dwellings, and C, to waive 7.3 feet of the minimum required 33.9 feet north yard setback measured to the attached garage, to permit construction of a new single-family dwelling located at 222 North Hawthorne with an attached garage that projects into the minimum required front yard setback. Mr. Murphy.
This property is located on the south side of Hawthorne, and as noted, the petitioner is proposing to construct a new single-family home. The proposed total lot coverage is 32.3%, and the zoning ordinance allows for a maximum lot coverage for this particular lot of 30%. So the petitioner is seeking that difference, 2.3%, which is approximately 207 square feet. The ordinance requires a minimum front yard setback equal to the average of the adjacent dwellings. And when we determine the average of the adjacent dwellings, we're measuring to, for living, we're measuring to the exterior of the structure's nearest point of living space. So that number is 33.9. The petitioner is their proposed setback measured to the nearest point of living space is 31.6. So they're seeking a waiver of 2.3 feet from that minimum front yard setback. Additionally, the zoning ordinance allows for a front entry attached garage to extend no greater than 7 feet from the structure's nearest point of living space on the ground floor, provided that the attached garage doesn't project into the minimum or 33.9 foot front yard setback. In this case, the garage does project into that minimum required front yard setback. The proposed attached garage extends 5.7 feet from the structure's nearest point of living space. Again, it projects in, however, it projects into the minimum required front yard setback. The proposed attached garage measures 26.6 feet from the front property line. Therefore, the petitioner is seeking a waiver of 7.3 feet from that minimum required 33.9 foot minimum front yard setback measured to the attached garage.
Any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Klatt?
Joseph, is there anything that would prohibit the applicant from moving the house back 2.3 feet into the rear yard? Would there be a rear yard setback issue?
There would not. There's plenty of rear yard setback. The minimum is 35, and they're proposed, if we measure it to the screen porch, it's 53 feet. So there's plenty of room to push the structure entirely to the rear.
Does that eliminate?
So that eliminate one variance off the bat.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Are the petitioners present?
Oh, no, I'm not the petitioner.
Oh, your hand went up so fast.
Sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Greg Van Landigum. I'm with Horizon Homes. I'm here. I wanted to let Ellen, who is the home buyer, say a few words, and then I will come back to address the specific variances we're requesting.
Very good.
Hello.
And if I could just have you introduce yourself for the record, please.
Certainly. My name is Ellen Barton, and I currently live at 409 Park Avenue in the small complex of townhomes just south of the Royal Oak Middle School. And I'm here with my daughter, Maureen Kraut, who is a lifelong resident of Royal Oak. And recently, Maureen and I have decided to combine forces and live together. She's in need of more care and support, and I'm in need of a house that will accommodate both of us as I age and as she does. So we've contracted with Horizon Homes to build a fully accessible ranch house for the two of us. It will have one feature that is of particular interest to the request for the variance, and that is a screened-in porch. So I'll let the builder talk about the specifics, but my understanding is that my request for a screened-in porch is what caused this 2.3% variance request. And the reason I want a screened-in porch is for my daughter to be able to have some outdoor recreation. It also would give her a chance to be outside on the porch if, say, I were at work, okay, which which I think would be a benefit to her. Where we are now, where she is now, she's in the 101 Curry building. there's no chance for outdoor recreation, and I live in a complex where there's no backyard. So that's why we want to move to Hawthorne. The house, I think, will look very fine next to all the other houses. And so, let's see. Right. So those are my reasons. I'd like to build in the screened-in porch for Maureen, and you know, I would like her to have that option.
So just beyond that, to elaborate a little bit, beyond just the screened-in porch itself, I mean, there's multiple components that went into this house and the design of this house, being that it has to be a single-level home, and to get the functionality and everything that I think she really needed into this home, it pushed us just beyond sort of that allowable lot coverage. So, you know, we'd ask that you take careful consideration of, if you look at, there should be floor plans provided with the variance request. So you'll see that, you know, the wider doorways and some of the, there's multiple things for wheelchair access throughout the house that sort of require a larger footprint. Is it? Yeah, the bathrooms are larger, the aisleways in the kitchen, things like that. Is there any specific questions that you guys have regarding?
Does anybody have any questions for you? I'll start with Mr. Olfak.
Why did you cite the plan where you did on the lot, considering you could easily have enough room to push it back and not need that variance? As well as why didn't you push back the garage so you wouldn't need the variance? This is one of the few garage-focused houses on the lot, and you could, in my opinion, you could have easily shifted that back and aligned even the back wall of the dining room aligned with the patio, and not needed either of those variances.
Right. So actually, the setback was not of as much concern to us. What we did is, in an effort to keep continuity with the street, we plotted the house as such. The variance request was really pertaining to the lot coverage issue, so we could keep the size of the home. The setbacks were something that were identified in that process. So backing the house up would not be of great concern to us. We just think with the continuity of the street, I think probably the adjacent houses are all out of ordinance. So we really just wanted to keep the continuity of the street.
Anthony, if I can illustrate on the drawing on the screen, you'll see the house next door measures, according to the survey, 26.8 feet. That's not measuring to the nearest point of the living space. That's measuring to their screen porch, essentially. And the opposite side as well, it's not 26.4, it's not measuring to the nearest point of the living space. So when we look at the survey and the petitioner addressing the line of continuity, that straight side, they're taking the nearest point of the structure, not the living space. So that's where he was referencing.
No, I understand. I was just wondering if that's the reason why, or if someone just plopped it there just because they wanted to. I just wanted to hear why. Thank you.
Any other questions? I thought I saw another hand over here. Yes, sir.
No, I mean, I understand the practical difficulties surrounding accessibility. I mean, if you could build a two-story home, sure, your footprint would decrease and you'd be compliant. So, but I understand the accessibility needs. So I personally don't have an issue with the overage and the lot coverage. I think it's a small percentage. But I just did, like Anthony mentioned, I did question why the home couldn't be set back 2.3 feet. And also, like Anthony mentioned, like that whole grouping on the right-hand side, which could be the dining room, the kitchen, the living room, the garage, that whole right-hand side could just be pushed back a bit, could be slided back a bit to comply. I just wonder if you thought about that or explored that option in the design. That's my only question.
Yeah, again, I think ultimately, the way the home's designed, I think we're happy with the layout, and we wouldn't want to. It's not something that we would want to change. We won't be more apt to just set the entire structure back, which I believe would be the 7.3 feet for it to comply.
Any other questions? Before I move forward with the public hearing, in this case, is just a simple majority on these issues, so.
Yes.
You'll just need 4 affirmative votes if we get to that point.
Sorry,
Mr. Klatt?
Chair,
Yes.
one last question too. If we did push the house back 7.3 feet, would then that impact, I'm not looking at the site plan, Joseph, would that impact our rear yard setback?
It would, but there's still an excess at 53 feet and only
Okay.
needing to be 35. That would eliminate the variance request for, related to the garage sticking out into the front yard setback. And then as such, it would also address the setback from the minimum front yard setback measured to the nearest point of the living space. So yes, indeed, it would eliminate or strike the 2 last variance requests.
Understand, thank you.
I would like to say that we would prefer to keep the continuity of the street and keep the house plotted as proposed.
All right, excellent. Is there any other questions for the petitioner at this point? All right, then.
I have one. I guess I'm not really hearing a hardship why I should vote yes for this.
Well, I think ultimately, as I alluded to earlier, is just the essential components of the home, the screen porch being one, which is close to 200 square feet, which is the majority of what we're asking for here, is an essential component for Maureen. You know, I think for her to be able to enjoy, you know, the outdoors, get the fresh air in you know, different types of weather, you know, I think is a very important component of the house.
Well, I'm sure it is, but based on the criteria that we have, whatever we grant here tonight goes with this property forever. So situations within the property change, but yet the neighborhood. One of my problems with it is you're building a new house. We spent a lot of time in the master planning process to decide what that ought to be. If you had a pre-existing condition that I could help you with, that's one thing. But to just come in and build a house that's not. I sometimes wonder, I understand the particulars of this situation, but we're really up here voting on hardships for the entire city of Royal Oak. So I think a lot of people would be up in front of us for their personal concerns, and obviously a lot of people have them, but I'm not hearing a hardship that I can get behind.
I guess like one of the previous homes we did approve had an irregular lot. It had challenging property lines and setbacks. There's nothing we could do by moving that house back. It would still impact that entire siding of that house. But here we can move the house back a bit to make it comply. So there's no practical difficulty for that.
And the rooms are quite large. And I'm not telling you what size rooms to have, but it's so close to being on meeting the criteria that's set out by the master plan. It seems like you could shrink this thing to the point, not very much, and be able to not be in front of us today. There might be one variance or something still needed.
Right, and I understand that, but sometimes something that seems small, it's 200 square feet, but when you take that particular plan, being a single-level home, and try to eliminate that 200 square feet, it does create a lot of difficulties in a lot of different areas. There's not one particular area that you can point to and say, you know, we're going to cut 200 square feet of this room out without really, you know, doing a great deal of detriment to the functionality of the home.
All right, well, if there's no other questions for the petitioner at this point, I'm going to ask you folks to take a seat real quickly so I can open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address us on this matter? How did I know your arm was going fast?
Just a minute, take me a minute.
Take your time.
Had my knees done. I brought pictures. And today, they were clearing out the tree, and they moved some dirt.
Miss?
That.
Miss? Miss? Can I ask you to be over by the microphone? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm Linda Stuckey. I'm at 216 Hawthorne.
Thank you.
I've been there 40 years. I have no objection to having a new house put in there. My objection is, when you look at those pictures, my driveway's set above her lot. And there's a concrete retaining wall there. And I'm very concerned that when they start digging and thumping and everything else, that all that old concrete is going to crack. That probably as old as the house is. So I'm concerned that I'm going to be losing the foundation on my driveway. And they were clearing out the tree today, and I think the backhoe uncovered something, and there's a picture. I don't know, I didn't have a chance to take it because I just noticed it today, that about a foot from my concrete wall is some more concrete in the ground. And I don't know what that is, if that was just something that was put in there, like for gardening or something. But the deal is that when they start to take that out with the backhoe, he's gonna be digging more of my dirt out of my foundation. So I want, before you can approve anything, I want the builder to give me in writing that if my foundation crumbles and starts to slide in, that he'll fix it. You can't build a lot, you can't build a house and destroy my driveway too.
All right, I'll have Mr. Murphy address that concern at the end of the public comment. Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board on this issue? All right, not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. I know that construction site issues in neighboring properties have been a hot topic lately, if you want to address that a little bit.
Yeah, they have been. And unfortunately, at times, things like that do or potentially do not happen. And the petitioner may be able to address some of the ways in which they could continue to do site clearance and still and prevent that from happening to you. Unfortunately, there's nothing at the administration level that we would be able to provide you an assurance that one property owner adjacent to you wouldn't affect yours. That would become a matter, unfortunately, for yourself, a matter between yourself and the adjacent property owner. But we always encourage builders to be quality neighbors and to take precautions when necessary. So it's good that you're bringing this to the builder's attention now so that you may have a sidebar conversation with them to figure out how something might be alleviated.
Well, I can understand what you're saying, but also if I do not get assurances from the builder in writing with some kind of a guaranteed time that, you know, over the winter or something, all the cracking, it might become more prominent and everything with the ice and everything, then I will have no choice except to get an attorney to stop construction until the builder satisfies my concern.
Yes, unfortunately, instances like that do happen. Well, the good news is the builder is here today, and perhaps after the board makes a decision, you can have a conversation with them to try and address your concerns. It's good that you're bringing them to the builder's attention now. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have positive interaction with their builder or no interaction with the builder adjacent, and then by then it's too late. So this is good that you're bringing this to his attention now, and then they may be able to come up with a solution that'll solve your concern.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, bringing it back to this side of the table for additional discussion. Yes, sir.
The American with Disabilities Act tops local law. This is not one of those cases, but I feel like it's in the same spirit of that, in that I don't think that when the lot was platted in the 30s or 40s, the size of the lot took into account people with disabilities that would need a ranch home. It's going to have to take up more, area because you're not building up, you're building out. So in light of that, and in order to create more light and air in the backyard, I would be in favor of granting both variances. So.
Is that a motion?
No, I mean, not yet, but.
Okay.
Sounds like a motion to me.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to grant both variances as proposed.
There's three.
There's three. There's three. I thought there was the setback of the garage. It was the size of the footprint.
Setback of the house is two.
I was thinking that those are the same as it was the house setback and the garage.
Percentage of coverage.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Then I have a motion to approve all three variances as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there support?
I'll second it.
Supported by Mr. Kroll.
I didn't support it, I seconded it.
Second by Mr. Kroll. Any additional discussion on your motion? Mr. Kroll, do you want to chime in?
I'm really not sure where I'm going with this. I'm sympathetic to the cause. They're not asking very much. If they were asking more, I know I wouldn't be going there with them, because I do have this hardship problem, in the fact that everybody comes in front of us is trying to break the law, and we've got to determine who has a reasonable hardship to allow us to do that. However, in this case, they're really asking very little, I think, to help accommodate a Royal Oak resident. So I'm not sure which way I'm going, but I'm kicking it around.
Well, I'll chime in. This is an interesting case in the sense that rarely do I look at something and then after getting a reasonable explanation think to myself, you know what, 2 of these variances actually make sense, and pushing this into compliance may not make sense, because if all they're doing is situating the home so that it's parallel and consistent with all the other home placements next to them, then you would think that you're doing justice not just to the potential homeowner, but also to the neighbors, because you're now creating, the houses are parallel and in line with one another. So it seems to me that's pretty much the case from what you had indicated from the rear yard setbacks and so forth. And the logic. Yeah, so in this case, I think it makes sense to, you'd always want to encourage those variances because it makes sense for the neighborhood. So these 3 variances I have no issue granting. I think they all make perfect sense. Yes, sir.
The one I have the most problem with is the garage. I think, I agree, I can understand the one coming forward, lining it up, but why the developer couldn't have designed this a little bit better, where the garage was pushed back and not need to come before us for that variance. I don't think that's a good enough excuse to not allow it in this case. The patio, if it wasn't enclosed, it probably would not be counted, so they would be perfectly fine. So that one I could sort of understand, it's in the back. And I agree with the house face lining up with adjacent. It's just the garage one that I have a problem. That's why I can't necessarily support this one. If it was just for the other 2, I'm on board for that.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I agree with Anthony. My only problem is the garage. And I guess it's a question for you, Joseph. Is the garage in line with the next door properties, or is it the other part of the house?
The garage is in line. That's the nearest point of the structure itself. As we know, the ordinance says that an attached garage cannot stick out more than 7 feet from the front face of the house, no matter where the structure is placed on the lot. In this case, if I remember correctly, go back and look at the numbers here. The garage extends 5.3 feet from the structure's nearest point of living space. So it actually meets that ordinance requirement. It's just where the whole entire structure is placed on the lot. So it's not that the garage sticks out, we'll say, too far from the front of the living space. It's just where that entire structure is placed on the lot.
I'd like to, I too have a problem with the garage, and this is why. Well, first, let me say that, 2.3% of the living space. I don't have a problem with the coverage of the lot issue. When you orient a ranch-style house and you have to fit in bedrooms and kitchen and living space and bathrooms all on one floor, you end up with a little bit bigger footprint, and it certainly seems warranted here in this case. It's in keeping with the sort of square footage of the neighborhood and so forth. I don't think that coverage is my issue at all. Here's why I think the garage seems like a challenge to me to approve. What's sticking out next to it is a space where people can stand and see up and down the street. A garage kind of blocks that view. That is to say, the neighbor has to look at a garage which cuts the sight line down in a way that this new structure would look at their neighbor's porch and so forth, and that wouldn't really cut down the same sight lines as a garage does. And so if you're the new one on the block here, I would hate to cut down on the neighbor's enjoyment of their space in order to accommodate the new one on the block when setting it forward does the new one on the advantage. I'm inclined to think if they set it back a little, that we have a happy compromise. That's my thought.
Sorry, can the motion be amended to subtract one? So let's say, for example, we could reduce, maybe we eliminate one variance, the 2.3 feet. Because I agree with the applicant that just simply taking 6 inches out of the plan of the bedrooms isn't going to help. It's going to make those rooms worse. They're not going to comply with the accessibility you're trying to achieve. But as design professionals, like Anthony, we have to find creative solutions to work within the ordinance. So if it's set what it is, we have to meet those restrictions. So my one thought was, can we eliminate one variance, push the house back 2.3 feet? Because I think 7.3 feet will impact that backyard quite a bit. That'll eliminate one variance and, I guess, help with the garage condition too. So that's my suggestion.
Well, if actually, my thought was is if you actually leave that front portion, you can, the 2.3 is not to the front porch, correct, Joseph? It's to the front of the house next door, right? Or if their argument that 2.3, that was to line that portion up, or was it the garage to line up with the front porch?
It's the garage.
They're just trying to get the garage.
No, it's just.
I thought Anthony was still making a point, I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say my concern is still with that garage sticking out too far. But, yeah. I'd like the garage to be more in line with the house face than the porch face, but.
Well, we do have a motion on the table if everybody's ready to take a vote. The motion is to approve the 3 requested variances. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Can I see a show of hands for the nays? All right, so that motion does fail. 3-4, is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
All right.
Now, is it appropriate to make another motion at this point?
Yeah, sure.
If you'd like to, absolutely.
For a clean record.
Well, I would move to approve A and B and not C, and have them come up with some compromise for the garage.
Would you like to offer that compromise, or?
I have no idea how to do that.
I'll support.
But I just don't like that garage sticking out like that.
All right, so we have a motion now to approve variances A and B, but to deny variance C. That was supported by Anthony, is that correct? All right, is there anything you want to add to that? All right, I guess before we call for the vote, can the petitioner come, yeah. I mean, you hear the direction that this is going in. I just wanted to get your thoughts before I actually call for the vote.
I think what Anthony proposed was more than reasonable. I think the 2.3 we would be completely in favor of. As I stated earlier, I think the setback was not our primary concern, so I think that's a very reasonable compromise.
Okay, so the motion that is being proposed right now, you're okay with?
Yes.
All right. All right, that being the case, any other comments?
Well, I do have a question. So.
Yes, sir.
We're talking about moving the entire structure back 2.3 feet, correct?
Correct.
That's what we're talking about. So the garage?
No.
It would have to be more than that because it would still result in a non-compliant. C would go from 7.3 of a variance to 5.3 of a variance.
Or 5.
5.
Yep. 5 even, right. That was what I was.
So we still need a variance based on this exact same design.
Yep. So I don't know that we've solved our problem.
What is the motion?
The garage would just have to move back 5 feet.
Well, the motion, I think, was to approve A and B, but C is still on the table because we haven't solved the problem. It still needs a variance. Is that right?
It was to deny C.
Yeah.
So and that's my point. So if we deny C, then the entire structure has to go back.
Or they have to do a redesign to shift the garage from being out to being further back, recessed.
Which is why I think we can come up with a compromise for C, which is.
Yeah. Let's send them out of there with a compromise anyway.
But as the motion maker.
Well, I still have a problem with the garage being further out than the rest of the house when it's a front-facing garage. And so that really won't solve the problem. The sight lines will be better. And if you move just that section back, you lose some of the screened-in porch. and the flow changes. So I'm not sure.
Do I understand that it is compliant for a garage to stick out further than a house up to whatever that number was? 7 feet, right? So the fact that the design has a front-facing garage that sticks out further than the house is not an issue. In my mind, it's a question. It would still be distance to the property line if we only move it back 2.3 feet. 2.3 feet certainly adds what my concern, really subtracts from my concern of the sightline of neighbors, exactly 2.3 feet. So I don't know if I might be satisfied to vote if C was amended to 5 feet instead of 7.3. I was told there would be no math.
So at this point, it would be up to the motion maker if she wants to amend the motion to 5 feet, or you could withdraw it entirely in a new set of motion.
Start over, withdraw, if you're in agreement to that.
Okay, I'll agree to withdraw it, and we can come up with something else.
Okay, so that motion is dead and gone. Mr. Olfak.
Simplified, since we are pretty much all on board with A and B, let's get that one out of the way. I propose that we grant A and B as requested.
Are you okay with this coming in two parts?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Olfak just to address A and B. Is there support for that?
I'll second it.
Supported by Mr. Kroll. All those, second by Mr. Kroll. All those in favor of granting A and B?
Can we have discussion on this new motion?
Sure.
So if we grant B, then we're asking them to redesign how far the garage sticks out. If, for instance, we would do the motion they can keep the design and just amend C to move back 2.3 feet the whole, then the garage is 2.3 feet back further. They don't have to redo their entire design, rather than approve B and then leave them with a C problem. We solve everything if we
Well, I was
simply
going
amend C.
to address C as a separate motion.
Right.
Well, my thought is, if we grant B, I think it's B, that is the 2 some distance from the front of the house to the property line, if we leave the front of the house there, now they have to redesign the entire thing, whereas if they just move the whole thing back a little bit, maybe we'd vote for the approval of C if it wasn't 7.3 feet.
Well,
That's my
would
point.
you like to offer a friendly amendment, and then obviously the motion maker can determine if he wants to be okay with that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my thought is, we would amend it to, I guess we're not approving B at that point, right? So we have to say, we can approve A, the coverage issue. We would amend B and C in that we would move the entire structure back to 2.3, eliminating the need for B, and changing C from 7.3 variance to a 5.0 variance. That would be my motion.
Right now, just to keep things simplified, I prefer to either us just vote on A or just vote on A and B and then figure out C. I don't buy the argument of trying to save them design time. That's not our job to make that hardship that they brought upon themselves easier. They could have done that in the first place. So I will not buy that argument to do that. I'll amend it to just go by A right now. I guess we'll take these one at a time. So I would just propose right now for us to grant A.
Okay, so,
Support that motion.
well, Mr. Kroll was the original supporter, so.
I'll support that.
Okay, so right now, we're just talking about making a motion on variance A, all right? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, we're a third of the way there.
Any opposed?
got A.
Any opposed?
Oh, I'm sorry, I heard all ayes, so any opposed? The water's getting so muddy, I'm confused at this point. All right, so now, who wants to take a stab at dealing with B and C?
Be happy to take a stab at dealing with B and C. I move that we do not approve B and C but rather request the petitioner simply move the entire structure back the 2.3 feet, eliminating the need for B and amending the need for a variance on the garage to 5.0.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Curtis,
I will second that.
supported by Mr. Kroll. Is there any discussion on this motion?
I still have a concern because you've just moved that garage back 2'3" from where it is now, which does not help necessarily your argument with the porch. It's still sticking out there, 3 point whatever, some odd feet, about like that. I would have no problem whatsoever if the garage was aligned, even though I hate front garages, if it was aligned with the house front next door, not the porch front. That's 6 foot back from where I believe it is now. So that's my problem with what you're proposing. And this way, you're not blocking any obstruction from the porch.
All right, is there any other discussion? All right. Actually, I think what Mr. Curtis is proposing is it's a fair compromise. So not seeing any other...
The only thing is we're granting a need when there doesn't need to be a need. Like we all have seen already, with the exception of the 2.3% for lot coverage, we're granting them something that doesn't meet variance just to make it easier. There's not a real hardship presented to why it has to be this way. We're just trying to be nice people. So I sort of have another problem with doing that just because of us trying to be nice. We're supposed to be trying to present this upon hardship, so I have still a problem with granting even a compromise.
Your motion was to approve or deny?
He modified it.
Well, the motion was actually to deny as it's presented and ask the presenter to modify, but that's really not something I can move to do, can I? Yeah.
They'll just have to
design
and comply.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's just a deny.
Yeah, good point.
So,
Did you catch that?
so Joseph, to be clear, is that saying basically to just deny B and C? Okay, thank you.
All right, so your motion is to deny B and C, and where was the supporter on that one? I'm sorry. You're okay with that?
Sure.
All right. I won't be supporting this motion. I think the house placement was done thoughtfully to be consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. The amount that the garage is sticking out, I think we are being punitive by denying these two particular motions, or two particular requests, I'm sorry. Anybody else? All right, all those in favor of the motion to deny B and C signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
No.
Yourself.
I'm a no, and
Okay. Motion passes. B and C. Motion carries. B and C are denied.
Okay, so just for clarity, if we were to just back the entire house up 7.3 feet, it would be in compliance? Okay.
and moving forward, that's what they're going to be compelled to do.
That's one of the solutions.
Right.
Unless they came up with another design.
You look like you have a question.
No, I think we're fine with that, like I said.
Okay, all right,
said
very
from
good
the
then. All right, then you're all set. Thank you so much. All right, where are we now? Because I'm now thoroughly confused. All right, that takes us along to item D5, which is case number 170617, a public hearing on the appeal of Jeffrey Fontana, petitioner and owner for the following variance: waive 3.3 feet of the minimum required 32.2-foot north yard setback to permit construction of an addition to an existing single-family dwelling located at 3133 Merrill Avenue. Before we move forward with any other comments, if you want to address the address issue.
Sure. Yeah, I transposed mistakenly some of the numbers. The address is actually 3133, not 3313. We did note the correct parcel identification number in all of the notices and in the report, so I don't have any concern whatsoever in terms of notification of the right property versus the incorrect property. The parcel ID number is correct in all the notices that we did send out. I double-checked that map of 300 feet from, and I did select the actual correct parcel, just transpose the numbers in the report. So address is actually 3133 Merrill.
That being clear, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so that being cleared up, are there any questions for, well, you didn't even give an explanation yet.
Not just yet.
I'm trying to rush things along here.
The petitioner is proposing to construct additional living space and a covered porch to the front of the existing dwelling. You'll see that noted in the darker black line on the survey. The proposed additions reduce the front yard setback to 28.9 feet. Again, we're measuring to the exterior of the nearest point of living space. The zoning ordinance requires a minimum front yard setback measured to the nearest point of living space, equivalent to the houses adjacent. That number is 32.2. Again, that's the average. The petitioner's resulting front yard setback is 28.9. So they're seeking a waiver from that minimum standard in order to add a front yard additional living space. There's some floor plans, a survey in the report, and I think the photographs present a good viewpoint as to the location of the front yard addition. You'll see a little alcove on the front of the petitioner's home. They're looking to do that modest front yard addition of additional living space and the petitioner can address it further to get a better entryway.
Any questions for staff at this point?
Is the garage currently not in compliance?
Exactly.
It's beyond
Yes.
7 feet?
Exactly. So while the garage extends 10.25 feet from the front face of the dwelling, the addition doesn't stick out any further than the garage, but the garage is not compliant. They came in to do this garage today, they'd be in front of you for a waiver. So yes, the addition does not stick out further from the garage, but the addition doesn't meet the minimum setback requirement.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Are the petitioners present? Good evening, sir.
My name's Jeff Fontana, and I'm at 3133 Merrill. I bought this house because I was charmed by it, and it was the saddest house on the street. And it was funny because I had just gotten out of the MRI, and I was sitting in the parking lot, and I was thinking about things, and I looked in front of me, and it said for sale. So I went after the man, and he didn't want to sell it to me, and so it took a year. And I got the house because everybody else had turned it down. It has a bunch of funny little things. It hasn't been touched in years. But it's a house that deserves some love. And the problem is the front porch doesn't have a porch. It has a grip. So when you go to get in the house, it's very interesting. You step up, there's like 4 steps at all different sizes. You grab a hold of the grip, swing yourself backwards, then you open the door and swing yourself into the house, holding onto the grip. I have a friend with one leg, and it was very funny, but he doesn't come over anymore. Sometimes the mailmen kneel on my porch to put the mail in. About a month or so ago, I had a client who was going blind come over, and I asked him not to come in, but he wanted to come in. And it took over a half hour for his wife and I to get them in the house. It's cumbersome, if nothing else. Also, the design of the house could be improved. The neighborhood could help by just giving it a little new front and then, some paint and some, as you can see, some landscaping. But I was holding off on all that because of the digging process. It's all staked out for water sprinklers and things. And we've been working on this almost 2 years to just to get this front put on for different reasons that have now come to be, that I'm now here. But basically, it would put like a 5-foot closet and a 3-foot swing to the door. And it would give the house, which is, like you saw it, just flat, and that goes in, it would just pull it out a little bit. I've talked to the neighbors. They're all very nice, and they all think it would really help, you know, their houses too. And so basically, that's what it is I'm asking, is to bring it out in order to have a portico to greet people and to make it easier so that the steps are, like I say, there's 4 steps there at all different heights to get in. So it's a very difficult situation.
Any questions for the petitioner at this point? We'll start on the end. Yes, sir.
Raise your hand first.
Just one quick question. I'm just trying to read the drawings. It looks like, can you maybe explain the materials? It looks like it's concrete block.
It's the whole house is made of.
Sorry, the addition, sir. Just the addition part. It says, I can see some writing in there. It says wood like H board.
Yeah. In other words, to just the entire thing is cement. The floors, everything in the house is cement. So I'm having a terrible time just getting people to help me work in there because nobody wants to drill. I have to hire someone just to hang a picture. Everything is cement. So I thought that when they do it, since we'll paint, you know, the house needs some paint, that a little of that H-board, whatever, would be nice just to break it up for the design of the house.
Thank you.
Anthony?
I was just simply going to ask, did you have any pictures of this whole 4-step weird problem area, just to give a better idea of?
Pardon me?
You said there's like 4 steps to go.
There's another picture that shows,
Okay.
see it there? There's a step.
I thought that was what you were talking
then,
about. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't inside and.
Oh, no, when you go all the way up,
Okay.
the floor is way up there where the door is. The kitchen, that's the kitchen. The house is sort of backwards. That's the kitchen window, and it's way up in the air.
Okay. Okay, I from the plans, I couldn't tell if it was inside or outside.
No, it's yeah, everything's right there in the outside.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Any other questions at this point for the petitioner? All right, not seeing any, sir, I'm just going to ask you to take a seat real quickly and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the board on this matter? All right. Not seeing anybody, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Sir, why don't you come back up just in case we get any other questions? And this is just a simple majority vote for this matter?
Yes, you would need at least 4 affirmative votes in order to have the variance granted.
Is there any comments from this side of the board? Mr. Olbeck.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance as requested.
We have a motion on the table,
I'll support.
supported by Ms. Zukin. Any discussion on your motion, sir?
Normally, you don't like to support variances that are bringing upon things that could be done differently, but I think in this case, you're actually making a bad condition safer. Yes, if that garage wasn't there, you'd be sticking out more, but that existing garage sort of shields this bump out from the neighboring residents. So I don't think it's going to be impactful in that direction. And the other resident is far enough away, I don't think it'll be impactful to their line of sight either. So I think all in all, you're actually making a bad condition better. So because of that, I am in full support of this.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I agree. I think there's hardship here not created by the owner, and I think it will be an overall improvement. So I don't have a problem with it.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, I would certainly see a hardship that this is certainly in the best interest of Mr. Fontana as well as the neighbors.
Agreed? Yes, sir.
I'm not seeing a hardship. I think you could just bump it out, but not past the front setback. You wouldn't have space for a closet in there, but you'd be filling in the alcove. I'm not convinced.
Okay. Anybody else? Not seeing anybody, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
You're all set, sir.
Thank you.
Motion carries. The variance is granted.
Can I ask now, I mean, at this point, what do I do now?
Sure. I'll inform the building inspector that they can continue to work with your builder to review the drawings for permits and get you a building permit.
And then we go from there. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, that moves us on to our next item of business, which is item number D6, case number 170618, public hearing on the appeal of Horizon Homes petitioner and Mary S. and Robert T. Walsh, owners, for the following variances: waive 4 feet of the maximum allowable 50-foot south front yard setback, waive 369 feet from the maximum permitted gross usable floor area of 3,500 square feet for a single-family dwelling, to permit construction of a single-family dwelling with an attached accessory structure garage located at 1734 Bassett Avenue. Mr. Murphy.
The petitioner is proposing to build a new single-family home, and the zoning ordinance allows a maximum front yard setback of 50 feet. We measure the setback to the nearest point of living space, and I'm going to refer to the survey that was provided in the packet, and it's illustrating a setback of 50 feet to the nearest point of the structure. And if we look at the floor plan, that's actually the garage. Measuring to this point, which is the garage. The nearest point of living space is at 54 feet. Again, the 50 feet is pointing to the nearest point of the structure itself, which is the attached garage, but the nearest point of living space is at 54 feet, according to the floor plan. So the petitioner is seeking a waiver of 4 feet from that maximum allowable front yard setback of 50. The petitioner's proposed dwelling would contain 3,869 square feet. The definition of usable floor area does not deduct openings to lower levels. And if you'll refer to the floor plan provided by the petitioner, the second floor, the floor plan illustrating the second level of the home, they've illustrated in a hatched shaded area the location and square footage of the openings to the lower level. And according to our usable floor area calculations, we don't deduct those areas. So in doing so, the resulting dwelling is, again, 3,869 square feet. The total of those openings is 482 square feet. So it's actually larger than that difference. Again, the maximum size home, 3,500 square feet. They're seeking a waiver of 369 square feet. The openings to the below, as they've shown on their floor plans, total 482 square feet. So they essentially designed the home without the clear knowledge of reading the ordinance requirements in terms of what the usable floor area is and accommodating for that in their calculation. So they're seeking a waiver of 369 square feet. Do you have any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Yes, sir.
I guess like case number 4, if we took this footprint, moved it 4 feet forward, we'd be in compliance and we can eliminate one variance. Is that correct? And that would not impact any other side yard, rear yards, we'd be in compliance.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What was the I think I found it, but I wasn't positive. What was the overall square footage on the lot? What's the square feet for the lot? Is that?
I've got that. It's actually 80 by 165 for 13,200.
That's what I thought it was. But
larger size piece of property.
Yeah. So it's
and it was created fairly recently from the very large piece of property next door.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Are the petitioners present?
Good evening again.
Second bite at the apple?
Yeah.
So I'm going to let Mr. Walsh speak on his behalf, and then I'll, again, be here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rob Walsh. My wife, Mary, and I have been off and on residents of Royal Oak for our entire lives. We were both born into the city. We met at Kimball High School. We lived in a home on York Street for 19 years and raised our children there. A few years ago, we had an opportunity to move into what some would consider to be a dream home. It was on a small lake in northern Oakland County. It was like living a vacation. But as we age, and having cared for our parents and know what it's like to work all day long and then have to drive 40 or 50 miles to get to your parents' home to care for them and help them get to the store and the doctors and all those kinds of things, we have come to believe that we would not like to impose that same burden on our children. And so we wanted to move closer to where they live. Certainly, our youngest daughter lives 4 minutes away from this piece of property. Most importantly, our granddaughter lives 4 minutes away from this piece of property. When we decided to move, we wanted to find something where we could build a new home to, frankly, enjoy the benefits that we've derived from paying off the mortgage on our existing home. The new properties in Royal Oak seem to be an incredible revitalization of our hometown, and we wanted to be part of that. So we started looking for property. And as you are, I'm sure, are aware, most of the properties in Royal Oak are 40 feet wide, 50 feet wide. There's very few that are large enough to accommodate what for us is a growing older home, one that incorporates a first floor master bedroom, a first floor laundry room, and an attached garage. We wanted to be able to build a home where we could live and stay continuously as we age, and then make it easier on our children to come and assist us. In meeting with the Horizon Homes guys and working with their entire team, we discovered this piece of property, which is part of the original Bassett property. It is in the front yard of what was the Bassett home. The Smiths own it now, and they sold us this plot that they had split off in 2015, I believe. It is not an irregular shaped lot. It's absolutely positively rectangular. It's 80 feet wide, it's 165 feet deep. That 80-foot width allows us to do a lot of things with the property, including designing a home that incorporates our absolute must-haves. Once you've put those elements into the floor plan, the footprint of this house is quite tidy. We are only occupying, I think, 21% of the allowable, or the entire plot, and that includes all of the space for the garage. As we move to a second floor, that's when we run afoul of the ordinance, and honestly, we were unaware of that circumstance. The house itself, from a realtor's perspective, is not at all 3,500 square feet, because they would not count that opening space in the second floor. Just as an aside, the realtor also wouldn't include the space to the outside dimensions, which includes brick siding all the way around the home and the thickness of the exterior walls, which is another about 200 square feet of allowable living space that really isn't allowable living space. What we are asking for is a variance that would allow us to utilize the volume inside the home in accordance with the design. A manner of complying with the regulation would be to eliminate the space that's called the bonus room. It's a studio space above the garage. If we we block off access to that, frame it with attic trusses, it becomes part of the discounted space, and the house then complies. It doesn't change the footprint of the house. It doesn't change the elevation of the house. It doesn't change the volume of the house. It only changes our ability to utilize that volume. And so in terms of our impact on the neighborhood, we believe that the design we've chosen is one that complements that neighborhood. We're very, very fortunate that it is a street with large houses on large lots. We will be, from an appearance perspective and from a footprint perspective, probably the smallest house on the block. Certainly, between the two houses on either side of us, we are not going to be straining the property dimensions that they have. The location of the house on the lot was set to be reasonably in line with the house on our left side, which is a very large Tudor. It also takes into consideration the view from that the Smiths have living in the Bassett house. The Bassett house and the Vinton house next to it are the original owners of that property. They are the folks for whom Vinsetta is named. Vinton and Bassett get pushed together and become Vinsetta. Vinsetta Park is named for them. Vinsetta, the street, is named for them. Those two houses both face woodward, and so our house will be sitting directly in the front yard of the Smith house. And so we've tried to be reasonably in line with the neighborhood, but push back as far as we can to eliminate as much as possible the line of sight obstruction that we would have, that we can't avoid having on their front yard. Thank you.
Any questions for the petitioner at this point?
I guess I had the same question as I had before. I didn't hear a hardship.
Well, I guess I was very interested in the discussion of the second item on the agenda today, and the discussion that you all had about penalizing large property by imposing standards that were written for small property. For us, it is a reasonable desire to utilize the space over the garage for what will realistically be my man cave. It will house an area where I can sit and watch football games while Mary doesn't have to. It will house a card table. It will house a pool table.
Sir, I don't mean to cut you off, but I was looking for a hardship. There's a criteria, there's 4 hardship criteria that we judge by. None of that fits in it. So I'm just, I have this thing today, say we're building a bunch of new homes and we're building them, we're doing what we want. So I see nothing unique about the property, or the situation.
Well, the property is actually unique in its size and its location. To build a small house on that street would be totally inappropriate. So the footprint and the facade elevation that we've chosen.
3,500 square feet is not a small house.
True, and our house won't be a 3,500 square foot house. It is within the confines of the dimensions of the ordinance, which presumably are there to protect Royal Oak from having a whole series of large footprint houses on small pieces of property. We don't believe that this house at all violates or challenges the intent of the regulation.
I'd like to add something, the hardship quality. The way it is set up, because it's kind of unique in terms of, I don't think it's the front yard of the farmhouse, it's kind of the backyard. So they're set back. But our neighbor, I think what they've tried to do is site this house in alignment with the other houses on Bassett, so that what I've been hearing all this evening is that we don't interfere with their site view of the road. Pushing it forward, I think we're going to be rude neighbors, and I mean, that is the last thing we want to do, is to come in, build a big house and obstruct their view. We've come in with what we thought would be, we don't want a track home, we want something that's vintage and fits into the neighborhood, so that we're going to embrace the neighborhood and hopefully be good neighbors. I think pushing the house forward, what our biggest concern is, that's an imposition on our neighbors. It's not really going to be an imposition on ourselves. It's going to be on us, on our neighbors.
Could this house be built according to our rules? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. The one thing, what he didn't mention, one of the hardships for us would be on this house is the fact that if we were not allowed to use the portion over the garage for what we call the bonus room, what we have now is a walkout area from living on a lake, and we walked up, a whole game room of things that he has had and cherished, but most notably my father's antique pool table will have no home.
Other than the
And
basement.
that would be,
Is this a hardship?
that is a hardship for me it is a hardship.
Okay. We judge property
I know.
that's going to go on forever. It's not about a piano, a tree, any of that. There are 4 criteria for hardship. I'm sorry, I'm not hearing any.
But my other concern is we're not building beyond a 35-foot home. The only way that would be over 3,500 feet is if somebody was to put a ceiling over our open living room. We have no intention of doing that. That's where the extra room would come from.
I don't have any way of judging that, and that has to be done in planning. I mean, in front of us today, it says that according to the rules, you're asking for 369 feet. My question is, could you build this without coming in front of us? I can appreciate what you want.
We'd have to start from scratch.
Are there any other questions for petitioner at this point? And this matter is a simple 4-vote majority, so as long as you're aware of that. I'm going to ask you folks just to take a seat real quickly and open up the public hearing, see if anybody wants to chime in. Is there anybody that would like to address the ZBA on this matter? I see, yes, sir.
Greg Keys, live at 1812 Bassett. The property is directly west of the proposed structure. Under the existing code restrictions, the maximum square footage allowable, as you had mentioned, is 3,500 square feet. The code has been enacted for a reason. That is to ensure the proposed structure complement the surrounding homes in the neighborhood. Excuse me. The requested variance is asking to increase the home by 369 square feet, or over 10% increase over the code maximum. All of the existing homes on the block met the requirements that were in place at the time of their construction. The requested increase would greatly alter the character of the existing homes on the block. According to the appeal process, the applicant must present evidence to show that without the variance, there would be caused exceptional due hardship. I submit a 3,500 square foot home is more than adequate for our neighborhood. If a larger home was desired, another location could be looked into. The planned home size is simply excessive and not well suited for our neighborhood. Hopefully, a compromise can be reached in the future. All this being said, if the new owners would have taken the time and approached the neighbors prior to any prior to this hearing, we would very possibly have been more sympathetic to their situation. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Do you have any issue with its site on where the building is located on the site in relation to trying keeping it aligned?
From looking over the plans, it doesn't appear that way. Okay.
All right, anybody else? I thought I saw a second hand. Please, come forward.
Unlike Mr. Kroll, I live in the neighborhood of all these variance requests. I live at 1820 Bassett, which is 2 doors down from the proposed development. I want to echo some of the comments
And
of
your
my
name,
neighbor.
sir?
My name is Mike McCullough.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I want to echo the comments of my neighbor, Greg Keys. I want the folks on the board to understand that this is a street where people don't live for years, they live for decades. All of us have lived there for quite a long time. All of us complied with the code when we built our homes. I built my home in 1990. Mr. Keys built his home in the 1980s. I don't see any reason for granting the variance in this case. A 3,500 square foot home, even on a lot this size, is a plenty big house. I want the board to understand that this is in the large lot subdivision, and the dimensions of this lot are the bare minimum of lots that can be allowed in this particular subdivision. The reason why the Smiths cut off 80 feet and not 85 feet or 90 feet, whatever, they wanted to sell a minimum size lot. So now you want to take a Bigfoot and put on a minimum size lot in this subdivision. This home can be built well within code. My home is less than 50 feet in terms of a front yard setback, and there's no reason why they can't comply with the front yard setback as well. And one point I want to make is, again, what Mr. Keys mentioned, that had the neighbors or the builder had approached neighbors that have lived on this street for decades and said, here's what we plan to do as new neighbors. We want to embrace you as neighbors. Here's our plan. Do you have any issue with it? We would have had an intelligent, friendly conversation. But here now, in front of a board, we are looking at a plan that's presented without any input from the neighbors, and they're seeking a variance. Mr. Kroll, I agree with your comments throughout the entire evening. Hardship has not been demonstrated, and so therefore, I don't think the variance should be granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Please come forward, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mike Lineweber. I live at 1704 Bassett Road, just 3 houses down from the parcel seeking a variance. And I, too, echo sentiments of many of my neighbors in that this house is oversized. Our house is around 2,000 square feet, and a 3,500 square foot house is certainly, the upper limit of what one would expect is appropriate, and certainly to ask for more, I think, is not justified. As far as the site of the house, I was concerned when I looked at the plans that were submitted that they did not have any site plans other than mortgage survey. There are some grading and drainage and terrain issues that I don't see addressed there, that perhaps the location of this house is going to create some problems. But I would hope that when a petitioner is asking for variance, particularly for the way a house is sited on the ground, that they would provide that type of information. And I just don't see it in the packet that was submitted. So just to recap, I am not in favor of their requested variance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jack Day. I live at 1825 Vinton, and my home is what the petitioner referred to as the original Vinton house. Okay, this house has been, I bought it in 1999, but my family has owned it since 1953. The house was built in 1910. So we've done a lot about history and whatnot in this regard. I did read your 4 variance requirements, and I agree with all of the previous people here that that the code has to a petitioner, there has to be something in the code that prevented it to limit his use or something like that. I mean, this person bought a piece of land and they designed their own house. And now they're saying that they got a problem with it. The variance has to help the owner and the neighborhood. This variance wouldn't help the neighborhood in any way. Okay, it's just not there. The owner has to have some kind of a plight due to unique conditions of the property. Well, there's no plight here. As a matter of fact, this property is what we'd look at as a postage stamp. This is a neighborhood full of custom homes on very large lots, And this is a postage stamp lot here. Somebody's trying to put a big Conestoga wagon on it, you know? It's just out of character. And the hardship that we're talking about here is actually created by the owner himself. This owner and petitioner has created this hardship, and they've created it by others mentioned it. They didn't talk to the neighbors. They didn't learn anything about the other people that are living there. He learned a little bit about the land and some of the history. He didn't learn anything about the people. If you're going to move into a neighborhood, you should know something about the people. The plans are incomplete because the elevations on these plans don't really indicate anything about landscaping or drainage, and that's a big problem on this block. Okay, it's been a problem for years. I've spent 20 years with plantings and trees that suck up a lot of water and filling with dirt and whatnot to make sure that there's the water in my land goes out to Vinton, and nobody has even given any consideration. Where is this water going to go onto this property when they start building up higher and higher and higher? A lot of us are going to suffer from this, and those considerations weren't given. The house itself, I've looked at all the elevations. The east side elevation of this house is about 1,500 square feet of brick. It's got 2 windows sticking in there, and that's what the Smiths are going to have to look at forever. There's not a tree on the lot, and in fact, that east elevation is visible from my house and all the way from Vinton because there's a lot of open space in there. So everybody in the neighborhood is going to be looking at this bricks from top to bottom with 2 windows in it. There's not an architectural feature there. There's no columns. There's no bay windows. Nothing. So I'm looking at a big box house on a postage stamp lot, and I'm definitely opposed to it. I don't think this variance should be granted. It's way too big for the lot. In fact, if everything that these people ask for in the way of a house is available for sale right now on Vinton. It's a total, complete, all the features they've asked for, and it's for sale right now. It was totally rebuilt less than 4 years ago, and the lot that it's on is twice as big as this lot. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? All right, not seeing anybody, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment. And did you have a comment that you wanted to make in response to that, ma'am?
Well, I do. We did share, actually, I would like to share just a little bit, maybe with you. Our first thought, we really did try to find a home that would fit in with the neighborhood. I'll share it, and then I would like to share with my neighbors.
And if I could ask you to stand by the microphone, please.
Yeah. Something that would fit the vintage, that would not like a big box home. And that we thought very much, my husband's the one that found it, and I thought, yeah, it does look like something that would fit in that area very much. It looks vintagey. And the 3,500 square foot, I want everybody to be sure here. Sure.
Come over to the microphone. I want you to be in front of the microphone and direct your comments to us, please. Not to the
I just want to be clear. The 35, we're not. The house shape is not going to change if we don't. There's nothing about the shape of the house, the size of the house that's going to change if we use the bonus room over the garage. That's not going to change the size, the shape, anything of the house. The variance that we asked, we were trying to be good neighbors and not obstructing the view of our neighbors, but if that's a problem with them, we'll be happy to be wherever you want us to be on the lot. The only thing that would draw the house to be bigger is if we were to somehow wall the 2-story open living room, and we had no intention to do that. None. So we're not going to change the footprint, really the true size of the house whatsoever. And maybe if I could show my neighbors one of the copies of that, they could see that we really tried hard not to put a big box house in their neighborhood. We did take a lot of time to try to find something that would fit.
Miss, stay on the microphone. You're wandering all over the place.
So, I'm sorry that our neighborhood seems to be very upset that we're moving there. We did have contact with the Smith family that sold the lot to us. We did share the plans with them. They thought it was lovely. They're going to be our neighbors. So we're sorry. Sometimes it's just hard when people move into your neighborhood. I don't know, but I don't know. Anything else?
All right, thank you.
I'll sit down now.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to...
I'm sorry, if I could just make a quick statement. I think, just to elaborate on what Mary was getting at, is the variance request is not going to change the scale of the home or the size of the home. We're talking about either allowing a bonus room or not allowing living space in a bonus room. That is what is going to be the determining factor in getting the square footage above or beyond the allowable limit. So the actual scale of the home, size of the home will not be changed.
Thank you. All right, I've already closed the public hearing, so if there's any discussion from this side of the board.
I had one quick question
Go ahead,
for
sir.
Joseph. Joseph, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the ceiling over the great room was below, say, 7'6", so therefore it couldn't be livable space, if the floor got platted out, that wouldn't be counted then into the square footage, that 345 feet, correct?
If you change the roof pitch so that it wasn't
Just over that
habitable-
that open to below, over the great room, yeah. Because theoretically, you count livable space because theoretically in the future, someone could put a floor there, and that's why you count it. Is that correct?
That was the discussion at the Planning Commission and ultimately at the City Commission.
Okay. So theoretically, if they lowered that and they took off the nub, then they could meet the square footage.
Possibly, I'd want to see.
Right, exactly.
all
You'd
the
have to see new
drawings before
plans, but
committing to it.
But what I'm saying is, theoretically, it can be done. And
Perhaps.
with the same footprint.
Perhaps.
Okay, almost. Okay. That was a question I had.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a question for the two of you, I guess, because you were on the Planning Commission. The 3,500 square feet, I would assume it was designed for the exterior appearance of the house. And why would we care what goes on inside? If it's over 3,500 square feet on the outside, that doesn't fit with the overall master plan. Am I?
No, so, and my explanation is, I frankly don't remember when we were looking at the 3,500 square foot standard that we came up with, ever discussing having an open floor plan where you were going from the floor level to the second level and having no floor in between, and then having that put into the calculations. I just flat out don't remember having that conversation at the table at all. I'm not saying that we didn't, it's been a number of years, but.
Yeah, there was an extensive conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of components to it, so I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I don't recall the specifics of that conversation.
There were many different potential regulatory options that were looked at, maybe like 6 or 7, and this was the one that was selected. There are floor area ratios, meaning the amount of square footage is on a sliding scale based on the lot size. That was looked at quite negatively. And this is the solution that was selected at a time which there were no homes of this size being built. And today we... Planning Commission and City Commission have not indicated their intent to want to discuss to change the ordinance requirements at this point in time.
Thank you.
Well, I know the.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say
I'm trying to gather my thoughts.
I'm torn because I see in placing the house, they're trying to actually be nice to their neighbors, even though it seems like their neighbors don't care about where it's situated in going closer to the road and possibly blocking views. So I feel bad on that case. Maybe we're going to deny something that could help them, but the hardship of over square footage, this is a larger lot and it's only around 10%. So I feel between, and it's getting penalized because these open to below spaces, and that's why I said if it was where you definitely can't build in those spaces, this probably wouldn't even be in front of us because it would meet it for that portion. They'd only be in front of us for the variance for the front yard setback. So I'm really torn on the hardships of this because that's where the uniqueness comes from. I agree. Could they have met the 3,500 foot by not even having that open space? Yeah, they could have. Are they ever going to build over top that? I don't know. But that's why I said if it was lowered by ceiling, it wouldn't even be here. And you take that nub off the garage, there's 380 square feet right there, gone.
Yes, sir.
Is the public hearing still open?
No, I'm closed.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion?
Of course you can.
I'd like to make a motion to deny both requests. I think that it's a rectangular lot, it's a blank slate.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Supported by Mr. Klatt. You want to elaborate on your motion?
No, thank you.
Mr. Klatt?
I agree with the same thing. I mean, I guess I don't agree with the open to below, but we're not here to alter the ordinance. I can't change that. And I agree, it's a blank slate. The house could have been pushed forward 4 feet to eliminate that. I don't know why that wasn't done. And I think the petitioner can work with our city staff to figure out a way to get that in compliance.
Go ahead, sir.
From my perspective, I don't really know if it's right or wrong. And my position really is we're a board that's been put up here to protect the zoning laws. In order for us to change that, you need a hardship. Like I stated earlier, I think I'm more likely to help try to support the person that bought a home and would like, and is non-conforming and would like to make it larger and fix it up. I'm in more support of that than I am somebody building a brand new house and just not following our rules. For whatever reason, perhaps the open area, all the rest of that, but we're not a design board, and we're not the planning commission to change things. We're really here saying if you have a hardship, we may very well find a way to grant you a variance. I haven't seen a hardship, so I can't grant you a variance.
Any other comments?
Well, yeah, even though I totally agree with where this is going, I do think there are hardships here because the situating it farther back, that's an existing condition of the neighboring homes. So they're trying to be nice and align it with the neighboring homes. So that is an existing hardship that they're trying to deal with. I'm fine if we don't grant them that. And the square footage, it's an oversized lot compared to the normal 6,000 square foot. That presents its own circumstance. Whether or not we should grant that, that's a different argument and down their day. But I'm just saying I do see how those are potential hardships, especially in their eyes. Just being devil's advocate on that. I'm going to agree with the position that we're going because, like I said, they could have prevented this. But in general, those are hardships, and I don't want to discount those.
I mean, I've never been in agreement with the 3,500 square foot law. I would have voted against that, but it is a law, right? So I kind of have to. I mean, my house is fairly large too. I mean, but I have to take myself out of that and say we're here to protect the laws that they've given us. We don't get to make them up as we go along. But we can grant for variance for hardship. I don't see hardship. It's a square piece of property. They could certainly build this home on that property without coming to see us.
Well, I'll chime in at this point. I'm not going to be supporting this motion, and my reasoning is that, and has been stated, they could build this home and wall off the bonus room, if you will, and this house does not change. You have the exact same garage, you have the exact same everything. So they could theoretically bring this thing into compliance just by pushing it back to 4 feet and making it out of alignment with the other houses. But as you pointed out, they're trying to do that in a thoughtful manner. And then they could just say, the hell with it, we're just not going to have the bonus room, but we're going to build the exact same house. So I see a denial as being kind of punitive because you're still going to have the exact same house. Whether or not they choose to build it, that's a decision they get to make. But they can build this exact same house and make it in compliance. So for those reasons, I can't support it.
What's the square footage of the bonus room?
It's huge. Planning makes up for it. It's more than the open to below over the great room. Figure it's about 800 square feet. It's the size of the garage.
Any other comments? Yeah, I see you nodding your head over there.
It's this frustrating situation from my perspective because, you know, I don't think as open air as living space, but I wasn't in that. No one asked me is my favorite line, right? You know, 3,500 square feet seems kind of arbitrary, but no one asked me. As you said, Mr. Kroll, it's not my choice to rewrite the things. But yet what you've just said, you know, they can choose to just build it without the bonus room, and it changes nothing from the neighbors' objections. But I'm stuck between what seems like a silly thing to vote for because it's arbitrarily written into the law, but it's not my place to change the law. So there I am. I don't know.
Do you want to chime in again?
No, I was just going to, being the devil's advocate, I was just going to say, that's what the granting the hardship is. So if you think that they actually have a hardship regarding this, then Mr. Kroll says no. But if you're looking at it and saying, well, I can't change the law, but if you think it's a hardship, then vote that way. I'm not telling you how to vote.
Would you one more time try to sell me on the hardship, please? I'd like to hear it one more time.
Like I said, and I'm still going to be in support of this. The hardship is, one, they're trying to be nice neighbors and actually have their house pushed back farther than what it should be so that it's aligned and not being punitive to their neighbor. And two, like the chair has stated, if they lob off the access to the bonus room, same square footage. Or like I've stated, if you lower the ceiling to the great room, so therefore there's no possible way you could build over top of that and have a room, you have the same square footage. So by that default, those are the hardships I see, as well as the hardship of it being an oversized lot. And you're forcing it to stick with the normal 6,000 square foot.
I mean, my thought on it in response is that I think the public hearing said it's a hardship of their own making. We've said here it's a blank slate. You chose to do this, you didn't have to. So I don't know how.
Yeah. I agree. That's one of those things I agree too. It's a hardship of their own making. So
I wish
yeah.
But it seems silly to have to.
All right, do I have any other comments? So the motion on the table is to deny the requested variances. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No.
Motion carries.
To deny.
Grants.
Thank you, folks. All right, that moves us on to item number D7, which is case number 170619, public hearing on the appeal of Alexander Real Estate and Chris George petitioners and G4 Holdings LLC owners for the following variance. Waive the requirement that a multiple family development with 10 residential units be no less than 150 feet from an established single-family zone to permit the construction of a multiple family development located at 1303 Batavia as well as 1302 Irving Avenue. The ball's yours. Yes, sir.
As with so much in life, we depend upon the internet, and it doesn't seem to be responding.
Oh, good. I don't feel bad now.
Oh, no, I have an alternative way to do this. Okay, hold on.
Should we call off the rest of the meeting, eh?
Oh, no.
No, these guys are sad.
Print out, Joe?
No, I'm gonna go to the network and pull it down from there.
Around.
Oh,
No,
thanks.
thank you.
And this is a simple majority? Okay. And on this case, as we have 7 members, you just need a simple 4-vote affirmative to get this passed.
Joseph, I printed the whole thing there. Well, I want to bring it up on screen.
Yeah.
It's going to be helpful.
Go out there.
I'm officially frozen too.
There it is. Thanks.
Me too.
to waiting. I'm just going to drag this on a little bit longer.
We're back.
Okay. So this site is zoned mixed use too, and multiple family developments are special land use in this particular zoning district. In 2014, the petitioner received site plan approval and special land use approval from the Planning Commission in order to demolish all the structures that are on the site, still on the site, and to construct a two-story multi-family development with 10 residential units. Based on this lot size, the ordinance allows for 9 units, and the Planning Commission has the ability to give them a density bonus up to twice the amount of the allowable units. So they had the opportunity to give them up to 18 units if the petitioner is located at least 150 feet from an established residential neighborhood, residential zone. And this development cannot meet that requirement. They are less than 150 square feet, or 150 feet from an adjacent neighborhood. So the Planning Commission did grant the approval of this site plan with the number of 10 units, but they had a contingency within their approval that the petitioner obtain a variance for that additional unit, because again, the maximum allowable is 9. Petitioner proposed 10. The Planning Commission had no objection, presuming that the board granted the waiver from the setback standard of 150 feet. So that's why the petitioner is here in front of you today. There's a survey which illustrates the current condition, and there's a site plan which illustrates the proposed, the approved development.
Oh, looks like we're back.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help.
Questions for staff at this point? Yes,
Just
sir.
a question, Joseph. So just for clarity, how do you measure the 150 feet? Is that lot line to lot line or structure to structure, or how?
We're going to measure private property line to private property.
Property line, okay. And how close are they now?
I don't know the exact number, but it's essentially across the street, across Batavia. We'll look at the aerial photograph here. Look, the zoning map will reference the site and the single-family neighborhood that's across, parent. So that's far less than 150. It's probably, most right-of-ways are typically 60, so I don't know for a fact, but it's probably 60 feet.
Any other questions? I do have one question for you. This, and I remember when this was in front of the Planning Commission, and when I started reading, I thought, boy, that's been a while. There's no statute of limitations on them coming in front of us for this type of thing. I thought if they didn't start pulling permits or taking action on an approval within a year, then they go back to square one.
We do have some liberty in terms of granting them an exception if we do be as we try to be as generous as possible. The drawing that you see in front of you is the exact same one that went in front of the Planning Commission. If it was substantially different, correct. We would probably definitely send it back to the Planning Commission for further review. In this case, nothing's changed other than there's been a greater lapse in time than what one might find palatable, but nothing else has changed.
Right, okay. Yeah, because obviously with 3 years passing, we don't know if the will and desire at that table has changed at all and what have you, so I wasn't quite sure what the answer to that would be. And they wouldn't be in front of us at all if they were building 9 units.
Correct. They would need a modified site plan. If it was a reduction simply in the number of units and it didn't drastically change the site and what was approved, we would administratively approve it. If it was something entirely different layout, different site functionality, what have you, we'd send them back to the Planning Commission.
So were you just saying that if it was 9 units, they wouldn't have to meet the 150?
Yes, correct. Because it's an allowable number of units. They're seeking to add 1 extra unit.
Any other questions for staff at this point? All right, not seeing any. Are the petitioners present?
How are you doing? As brief as possible. Eric Wallstrom with Alexander Real Estate, the proposed developer and builder on the site. I'm the owner of Alexander Real Estate and Alexander Building Company. We came across this project kind of much after 2014, where I think the economic saleability of 10 units at that time allowed that there was not, it was not possible for the property to operate and make a profit. And then, so I think it kind of got shelved because the units were not able to sell for as much as they are now in this area, which is, especially with the Harrison development right up the street, has become a very desired area and a very good redevelopment area. I'd say, the variance for this, we're only going after one additional unit, which was the approved 10 units originally. We're not going for 18. We'd like to stick with the plan and then sell these as site condos, which is located right by the park right next door. I would say our one hardship is to not use the property in acceptable conditions to neighboring properties, which, the Harrison building was granted this exact same variance, I believe in 2014 as well. I'd say that's probably our biggest hardship, to just not use the property. Much like similar developments in the area, we've seen the success with the Harrison development, and this would be a nice final piece for that corner, which is in between Jamestown and Harrison, to complete that renovation of this entire, what used to be commercial and industrial space, into residential units. The design is by, award architect at Frank from FX. So he's created a great design, and we're really excited about the project.
Any questions at this point? And I guess not. And is there anybody else in the audience that wants to add anything? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. My name's Susan Gilbert, and I live at 1219 Irving. I am within sightline of the property that is going to be improved, hopefully. I've got a written statement. There's a growing demand for urban walkable living. Royal Oak provides exactly that, and we continue to attract new residents. With the shift from mixed-use light industrial to multiple family residential in the south end, Mr. George's planned project is a perfect fit. We're very much in favor of it. They're ideal for urban infill, and our old neighborhood was originally developed as single-family, but has been designated to evolve with slightly higher intensities due to the zoning changes. The previous Pichet property that stands on the site now has been somewhat of an eyesore. Multiple tenants ranging from construction to landscape services and the ever-present shipping container that's been sitting on the property since 1998, and probably long before that. Yes, that is over 20 years. The first development south of that property, the townhomes, hang on, match the community well. The newest developments just west, Harrison, a perfect fit and really celebrated because that really got rid of an abandoned warehouse site. I've met some of the residents, they're great. The abandoned warehouse property is now gone. We love that. With all of this high-density housing comes increased traffic, coupled with continued non-local traffic because of the Mohawk exit from 696. Again, we're very much in favor of what Alexander Realty and Mr. George wants to do, but what we would like to see is improvement of the berm at Irving and Parent to shield the existing single-family neighborhood from the new construction, and also have them have a green space developed to protect their residents from this non-local and bypass traffic that continues to come into the neighborhood. And my neighbor, Mike Thompson, he's part of our Lawson Park Neighborhood Association. The president actually is going to talk further.
Hi, Mike Thompson, 1210 Irving, for 30 years. We have a Lawson Park Homeowners Association for some time now, and we'd like this to be denied, but we'd actually support it if Chris George and the developer would agree to our conditions. So here goes our conditions. I want to pass this out. This is a signed petition. The first page has all the signatures. The other copies are just the first page, so I didn't produce both pages. Okay, and following up what Sue said, I'm president of the Homeowners Association. We've got a pretty active group at that south end. The traffic is getting worse and worse. It's the popularity of Royal Oak, we kind of created a monster. We've always had that interstate exit at 696. That's a cut-through right to downtown. It's back and forth. Right now, there's a traffic study going on that Joe Murphy was involved with, that we won't have the results to the end of the summer with how to look at that current closure and the diverters and the berm system, but it's been evolved, it's built up, it works. It's the Irving bypass and the berms. It separates multifamily high-density housing with myself and other single-family zoned homeowners. So with Mr. George G4, terrific, like Sue said, it's an old beat-up lot with some buildings that are obsolete. He's going to clean the slate. It's urban renewal. He's been waiting, and the timing's right. The numbers work. Even the extra unit doesn't alert us much. But this is our chance as a neighborhood to say, hey, this might be our only chance. You've got to give us a green wall. You've got to. The city, we've worked with them. I've gone door to door to try to get donations, but that's still ongoing. But we need a green berm or a refresh berm or some trees. Now, what I'm asking for in this letter that's signed by all the folks, and I could have gotten quite a few more signatures if I needed to. But what I want the developer tonight is the greatest outcome for us as a neighborhood is that you pass it on a condition that they replace the berm trees that got run over by motorists. The most recent cherry tree this last winter, I have a police report, a lady from Ferndale was speeding through the neighborhood. To get that put in, get those berm refreshed, and then get a dozen spruce trees and get a nice green wall. Now I'm asking for this on the north side, and you can look at the aerial photo after I sit down or that. But we'd work with Joe and your planning department and the engineering group, or work with the owner, but avoid the underground utilities and that. But this is great for both of us. If you're going to give a variance because they can't meet 150 feet setback from single-family zoned property, then at least as a substitute for the distance, give us a barrier, give us a green wall, and we'd love that. And if Chris and Alexander, I think it should be a condition as part of their profits that it's a drop in a bucket, and this is a great chance for the private sector to help out the neighborhood and plant these trees on city-owned property just north. And to me, it would be a win-win. So that's
So I need
that's
you
my
to try and wrap up, please.
What's that?
Wrap up, please.
That's it. Any questions?
Any questions?
Have you presented this to Mr. George or Mr. Alexander?
No, we just got more organized recently, but I'd be very curious, and I hope he sees the same way as I do. If he wants more density and make more profit, he ought to, and he's asking for a variance for less distance, he ought to be willing to make up for that in other ways, and trees would be a great way to do it. So I'll be here for more questions if there's discussion.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, seeing that there's nobody else out in the audience, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Mr. Murphy, isn't there some discussion at the City Commission table right now about the current configuration of the berms on the south end and possibly changing traffic flow? And so, I mean, because that's not the purview of this body. We're not in a position, we heard you, sir, hear me now, please. We're not in a position to compel somebody to install berms and do traffic flow studies and so on and so forth. That's the purview of a completely different body. And isn't that being discussed at this point?
Yes, we are under contract with the civil engineering firm to do a traffic study.
So, Mr. Kroll.
City Commission.
I would like to make a motion. Do we have one variance on this? To approve.
Motion by Mr. Kroll.
I'll support.
Support.
Again, I agree with you. I would hope that the developer could sit down with the neighbors, and it doesn't seem like a few trees is all that much to ask, probably. I wish you would have done that prior to coming here, because that really isn't something we can give you. I look at that whole area, quite honestly, and I just get a smile on my face when I drive down there. At one time, I think that was maybe one of our worst neighborhoods, and with the Harrison and the units on Irving and just all the development they're doing it, what a great way to increase our housing stock and in an area that we used to call that Houston, south of Hudson, right? So it's kind of just become a cool area, and I'm all for. I know we need more places to live in Royal Oak, and I think there's a great opportunity to help with that.
Yes, question for Mr. Murphy. I'm in favor of granting the variance, but in my memory, I don't remember ever having to or approving or making it a condition for off-site improvement for a variance. I don't remember that being typical. Usually it's on-site. You know, you have the landscaping on the site. We want the trees around the base of the structure, not in the right-of-way. Okay.
Would not be an acceptable contingency.
Right.
The city wouldn't take any effort to enforce it whatsoever.
That's kind of what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? All right, not seeing any, I will call for the vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You're all set.
Thank you.
All right. That moves us along to item E, which is other business. Is there any other business for the good of the body? Not seeing any, then that takes us
Motion to adjourn.
to public comment.
Don't look at any of that either.
As a member of the public, you motion to adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Kroll.
Support.
Supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Good meeting.